Part 112. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1148. The prop book is the means by which the gods control players, but it's just a little more euphemistic. Coupled with the convenience of the prop book, players will not reject the prop book, but will gradually regard the prop book as part of themselves. That's why it's not easy to get rid of the shackles of the gods, especially tearing off the cover of the prop book. Although this can still retain the function of the prop book, the mission system and reward system will all be damaged. At the same time, the players themselves will also become gangsters. Not only will they be strangled by the script library, but they will also lose their qualifications as players, which means that it is impossible to return to reality as easily as before. But these things no longer matter at this time. Su Tong called out his prop book and asked her to help him destroy the cover of the prop book. I am preparing to go into seclusion, refine the old magic sticks thoughts into elixirs as soon as possible, and understand the power of time and understand the role of the fourth inheritance of the Nine Immortals Cauldron. At the same time, Su Tong asked Master to contact Li Bo and inform him that he was back and would meet them soon. As for Mei and the eldest princess, Su Tong didn't care so much about their affairs, as long as he didn't bring the flames of war to himself. After giving the instructions, Su Tong immediately went into seclusion to improve his strength. There are really a lot of things to do in retreat, including refining elixirs, comprehending the Nine Immortals Cauldron, and also comprehending the Kinkan time stick. Ordinary people would find it difficult to do all the things. But for immortals like Su Tong, it's not a big deal. The magical power of thoughts is manifested at this moment. After Su Tong was promoted to Heavenly Immortal, he had 2,916 thoughts, which was rounded up to 3,000 thoughts. Su Tong once again started to prepare for a rainy day and borrowed strength from his future. This borrowing was 3,000 thoughts, which instantly doubled Su Tong's strength. Then he divided his thoughts into three. Transformed into three figures, there was no delay in refining elixirs, studying the Nine Immortals Cauldron, and studying the time stick. This multitasking ability is also thanks to the help of my exquisite heart with 7 orifices. Otherwise, if my thoughts are divided into three, I will always be a little sloppy. The elixir is actually simple, because the previously witches at the witch ancestor level have already made most of it for themselves. Now the elixir is just a little short of taking shape. Su Tong directly activated the blessing of the sky, and at the same time activated the title of Blessed Immortal. After forcibly improving his luck, he began to refine the elixir. The time stick is a good treasure. I have already touched the door to the law of time, but I have never started. With the blessing of this thing, I can take a shortcut. The most troublesome thing is the Nine Immortals Cauldron. After the fourth inheritance method was activated, layers of large halos appeared around Su Tong, but Su Tong didn't know what these halos were for. This made Su Tong scratch his head, jump to his feet anxiously, and complained in his heart that there was no instruction manual in the Nine Immortals Cauldron. In fact, Su Tong didn't know that there was an instruction manual for the Nine Immortals Cauldron. There was a scripture in the Qingcheng Mountain Library, which contained the secret of the Nine Immortals Cauldron. Only the real masters of the past dynasties would know this. But who would have thought that before Taoist Dongxian could pass the position to Zhang Haisheng, the cauldron would be stolen by those 5 damned thieves? Seeing that he would not be able to comprehend it thoroughly for a while, Su Tong simply chose to comprehend the fifth inheritance first. Just like during an exam, if you encounter a question that you don't know how to write, you can go over it and pick up something you know how to write. Three-pronged approach, the effect is also very rapid. In just 2 days, Su Tong had already comprehended the fifth inheritance method. This fifth inheritance method is simple, and its effect is clear at a glance. It is a kind of magic. It is just a blessing on the weapon. It can cut off the connection between the gods and the Dharma, causing the gods to lose control of the Dharma, heaven and earth. This technique is a bit interesting. The Dharma of heaven and earth is one of the most important means of the gods. The Dharma reaches the sky and controls the universe. The powerful Dharma has the power to destroy the heaven and the earth. Once the Dharma is destroyed, it will be a heavy blow to the gods. If the Dharma suddenly loses control during a fight, the controller will be in danger. And this can not only cut off the appearance of the law, but also the power of the law. For Su Tong, it was indeed of great help. The battle with Se had made Su Tong deeply aware of how powerful these gods who mastered the law were. Being able to cut off the opponent's laws will be of great help to yourself. Su Tong named this method Zhanzi Iju. At the same time, the elixir has also taken shape. It is in the last step itself that with the blessing of Su Tong's heaven and luck, at the moment when the elixir is completed, the effect of the hand of heaven is also activated. For a moment, the fairy furnace was filled with thousands of lights, and it looked like a brilliant nebula. Surrounded by the nebula, there was an elixir that was as clear as crystal. Taking a closer look, you can see that the elixir is crystal clear, and there is an eternal light of time silently inside the elixir. This elixir does not have any auxiliary drugs added, because it is the thought of the god of time. It is itself a part of time, and no medicine can match it. In other words, even the most valuable medicine in the world is not worthy of this idea. At this moment, this idea is perfect, but the old magic sticks thinking has disappeared. Without the old magic sticks thinking, anyone who consumes this elixir will receive a huge improvement. Then Su Tong's three thoughts came together again. He put the Kinkan time stick in his arms, and took out the elixir. The elixir was thrown with Su Tong's finger and flew into the center of his eyebrows. This kind of elixir can no longer be swallowed with the physical body and needs to be assimilated with thoughts. This process cannot be rushed, it is a delicate task. Once the assimilation is successful, the quality of your thoughts will make a qualitative leap. However, Su Tong can take advantage of this time to understand the power of time in the Kinkan time stick. I saw dots of golden light surging on the stick of time and space, gradually hanging above his head, shrouding his body with the power of infinite time. What is the time? Some people say that this thing is invisible. Can't you see it? The scenes of the four seasons flow endlessly before Su Tong. Flowers, birds, fish, insects, birds, and animals are experiencing the four processes of birth, growth, aging and death. These processes only take place in 3 breaths to complete a cycle. Some people say that time cannot be touched. Su Tong raised his palm, and a crystal snowflake fell on his fingers. The snowflake felt the temperature on Su Tong's palm and gradually dissolved into water. Time is the fairest and most ruthless. Whether you want it or not, it passes by in no hurry. From gods to human beggars, they are all involved in his operation. But it is also sentimental, and all things reincarnate after spring and autumn. Even if the sky ends, everything dies, and the world once again enters timeless chaos, perhaps one day, as time goes by, the chaos will eventually dissipate, and eventually a new world will appear again. Time may be invisible and intangible, but it exists in every breath you take. The breath you exhale in the previous second and the breath you exhale in the next second are history. At this time, countless chaotic times appeared in front of Su Tong, and time and space were confused, forming a terrifying time storm. This is both a test and a rare opportunity. Su Tong was in it, feeling the wasted years and the light and dust, and his body was constantly changing over the years. However, in the blink of an eye, the person's hair has turned gray, and a moment later, the body has withered, and a moment later, the person has become old and decayed, until the exquisite heart with 7 orifices finally stagnates completely. The body died, but Su Tong's spirit was extremely full. Thoughts were scattered in the gaps of time, feeling the mystery of time changes. His spirit merged into time, as if it had become a part of time. At this time, Su Tong's face felt warm, and a huge golden halo appeared in front of him. That is the end of time, eternity. There was a voice in the dark, urging Su Tong to hurry in. As long as he entered, he would be able to transcend the shackles of time and become an eternal and immortal existence. Su Tong was really moved at this moment, forever. It seems that all the power, wealth, and authority in this world pale in comparison to these two words. In just a moment, Su Tong's reason had already defeated his desire. If this is eternity, how come this bad old man comes from one world after another and acts as a money delivery boy for me? Wouldn't it be nice to go home and enjoy peace and happiness? Su Tong looked down at the golden turntable in front of him. The so-called eternity was simply nonsense. Even gods whose longevity is as long as the sky cannot last forever. Because there are 4 disasters, natural disasters, thunder disasters, fires, and wind disasters, there will be one every 500 years. After 4 times, there will be a catastrophe, and the gods and humans will decline. Most gods can't resist it at all. What should I do if I can't resist it? You can only hide or avoid it. If you are shameless, you might as well ask someone to do it for you. There is still room for manipulation of these, and I am afraid that there are very few gods who have truly survived the disaster that I have suffered from fate. So there is no eternity at all. If there is, that was also achieved with my hands. Su Tong's thoughts became clearer and clearer, and his understanding of time gradually became more profound and thorough. But at this moment, the thought that should have belonged to the old magic stick was filled with Su Tong's spiritual imprint. In an instant, there was light in front of him, and the power of time gradually became a part of Su Tong. Su Tong only had to think a little, and the time and space around him suddenly reversed, and his body, which had been left with bones, began to return to its youthful state in an instant. At the same time, the old magic stick who was meditating in the ward of number 5 hospital in City L suddenly stiffened and his eyes widened. It's broken, I'm a substitute. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1149. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of hoe hammering echoed around a huge mountain. Looking around, thousands of people were digging stones on this hill. Surrounded by huge towns, these towns are very strange. All the buildings are made of huge stones, which makes people feel like they have traveled back to the primitive world. Brother, is there any water? Give me some water. I can't stand it anymore. Where's the water? I haven't drank a drop of water for almost 10 days. If I don't give you water, I'll almost die of thirst. This damn place is really humming bloody. Damn, those bastards of the gods, I really want to greet their 18 generations of ancestors. Several people were smashing rocks and cursing, and these people were all players. Not long ago, they were wandering around the script world at will, killing and plundering locusts, and countless creatures were mercilessly slaughtered by them. But now they have transformed into qualified miners. This result was precisely because the gods burned bridges. After all, except for the 6th Regiment, most of the ordinary players could not really complete the mission. Most ordinary players can only get 3 or 4 more divine seals on the memorial tablet, which is already a big deal. After these players were forcibly classified under the command of certain gods, they became free labor and were sent to mine here. This is the lower world of the battlefield of gods. The battlefield of the gods is divided into 3 levels, upper, middle and lower. The time nodes belonging to one place are divided into 3. There are 18 horizontal worlds on each level. And the reason why this place is so special is precisely because there is a mountain here. It is this huge mountain range in front of us, which the locals call Gigzu Mountain. It is said that there is a huge palace hidden under this mountain, and it is this palace that the gods are fighting over. Many players don't know the specific situation, but it is said that the upper level has been dug out, but it is just a hilltop. But even so, the upper level has become the surer field in the battlefield of the gods. Fighting all the time. In comparison, although the lower class suffers a bit, at least they don't have to work hard. Now the players dare to be angry but dare not speak out. The rest of this ghost place is fine, but there is a fatal problem. The water here is more precious than the script points. This is not a desert. On the contrary, it is surrounded by rainforest and virgin forest landscape. Occasionally it rains heavily. But the problem is that the rainwater and river water here are not drinkable at all. Someone couldn't help but take a taste and died suddenly on the spot. Only then did people know that the water here was highly toxic. It is said that it was caused by a certain god. Once it starts to rain, everyone has to hide. Once caught by the rain, they will be seriously injured, or even their souls will be lost. Even if steel is contaminated by rain, it will be corroded into a pile of garbage in a short time. This is where the countless steel waste piled up around the mine came from. Now a mouthful of clean water is enough to drive these players crazy. Even if the players are in excellent physical condition, they will still be unable to bear it if they don't drink water for more than 10 days. If they don't drink water for more than a month, most players will die of thirst. What? Why not run? This is a good question, but don't ask it next time. It seemed like some kind of spell had been cast on them. Once they escaped from Gigzu Mountain, they would have splitting headaches and would be worse off than dead. While several players were talking, someone suddenly stopped what they were doing and looked up at the dark clouds in the sky. No, find cover quickly, it's going to rain. As soon as they heard it was raining, everyone quickly ran into the stone city behind them. I was afraid that if I ran slower, I would not be able to make it back alive. When people rushed into Stone City, black rain began to fall from the sky soon, and the rain fell on the stones, making a thumping sound. The players, on the other hand, crowded as much as possible into these simple stone houses, staring blankly at the heavy rain outside. Hey, brother, let me ask you about someone. In the crowd, a man wearing a black raincoat approached several players and asked in a low voice. When several players saw that he was unfamiliar, they waved their hands impatiently. Go away, don't disturb the uncle's rest. Libo was not upset after hearing this and took out half a bottle of mineral water from his sleeve and sent it over. When they saw the water, several players looked overjoyed. The leader immediately took the water and threw it into the prop book calmly. When he looked at Libo again, his face suddenly changed. Libo also took out half a pack of cigarettes and gave them to them. Cigarettes are also a rare commodity here. Several people got water and cigarettes, and they began to become familiar with Libo. Brother, my name is Changze. Who are you asking about? From that team. The leader of the players held a cigarette in his mouth and asked Libo calmly. Libo put the fire in front of the other party and said calmly, people from the 7 sects. 7 doors. When everyone heard this, they were immediately shocked. Changze hurriedly made a silence gesture and pulled Libodeo aside. Are you crazy? Why are you asking about this? Are you still thinking about the reward? The name Kimen is probably known to all players. It is said that the 6th Regiment once launched a siege, but it was unsuccessful. People from the 7th sect stripped him naked and took away all the script points. Later, the gods even directly issued a pursuit order, and anyone who found anyone from the 7 sects, living or dead, would receive a huge reward. It's just that these 7 sects are not easy to mess with. It is said that not long ago, a team hunted down the 7 sects, but the people of the 7 sects killed them without their armor. Even the gods were alarmed, and they had to resort to tricks to suppress the 2 of them. Otherwise, of course, the god would have been pinned to the ground with a blaster. Brother, I advise you not to think about it. The 7 sects are not easy to mess with. Even if you encounter them, you are lucky if you can escape, so don't think about the bounty or anything like that. Hearing Chang Zai's words, Li Bo did not explain. Instead, he followed the other person's words and said, "Are you lying? God, aren't you their opponent?" His poof. Chang Zai blew out a puff of smoke. "I really won't lie to you about this. We are members of the Blood Shark Group. Brothers, do you know what the Blood Shark Group does? Even in this place, there is nothing we don't know. Matter." When the boy on the side heard this, he immediately added, "Yes, but you have to be able to pay the price, for example, another bottle." When Li Bo heard this, he immediately rolled his eyes. "Brother, do you think I am iced black tea? Do you want another bottle?" Then he rolled his eyes and took out 2 sugar canes from the prop book and threw them to Chang Zai. "I don't have any water either. Just these 2 sticks can quench my thirst. You can see for yourself if you want." Chang felt that there was too little there, so he quickly put it away, and then lowered his voice and said, "The 2 guys who were suppressed by the gods before are on our lower battlefield, but they seem to be imprisoned in the fort of the gods at the back, guarded by the heavenly generals. Don't think too hard about it." "Are you sure?" Li Bo looked behind Stone City. There was a huge fortress there, which was the so-called Fort of the Gods. As the name suggests, it is the place where the gods responsible for this world live. "Brother, you're not trying to trick me, are you? Those 2 guys from Kimen are so strong, why don't they just send them to the upper battlefield to fight, instead of being locked up here? I heard that the upper battlefield is very short of people." When Chang Yi heard this, he immediately curled up his lips and said with a disdainful expression, "I used to be in the Blood Sharks, and I was also a well-known figure in the second-line team. Now the phoenix in trouble is not as good as a chicken, but I don't dare to hit our Blood Sharks, the group's brand." Seeing that Chang Zai was so confident, Li Bo believed him for the time being. "I just want to go in and save people, but I'm afraid it won't be easy." Li Bo looked at the Holy Spirit Castle in the distance, and his face became bitter for a moment. But even if there was a glimmer of hope, he still wanted to sneak in and give it a try. After all, Li Bo was no longer the ponyboy who used to follow Su Tong. Li Bo, who has obtained the skills inherited from Li Wu, can easily leave even if he can't defeat the 3 generations of gods. Besides, he just sneaked in. Li Wu had many stealth techniques, and with the blessing of his own natural power, it would be difficult even for the gods to discover him. Seeing that the rain came and went quickly, everyone walked out of the stone house as soon as the water on the ground subsided. Li Bo also disappeared into the crowd. "Brother Chang, that kid just now." At this time, the team member who was following Chang said in the team channel, "It seems to be someone from Kimen." "Nonsense, I recognized him at a glance, and you have to say, Kimen Li Bo, I can't recognize this guy, why should I be the second-line captain of the Blood Shark Group?" Chang Zai said angrily. "Then what you just did was. Just now, this guy was invincible in a script world. None of the top players in the script world could match him. The Blood Shark Group rated him extremely highly, with an S-level danger level. It pissed him off. Who among us can you beat me?" After Chang Zai finished speaking, he immediately pulled over a few younger brothers. "Go and report the news to the Holy Spirit Fort. Once we catch this kid, our hard life will be over." Upon hearing this, the faces of several team members suddenly showed expressions of ecstasy. They had already had enough of this hard life. But when one of the team members heard this, he whispered, "Captain, they are from the 7 gates. What I mean is, what if he runs away? If he wants to retaliate against us, none of us can afford to offend him." "Idiot, he can't run away. Although Chang Zai is not strong in strength, he has a good mind." Just as Li Bo suspected before, why are Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai, 2 masters with extremely strong fighting power, not sent to the upper battlefield, but left here? Isn't this a trap, designed to lure people from the 7 sects into taking the bait? Once this guy gets in, he won't even be able to escape even if he's extremely capable. After hearing what Chang Zhe said, everyone suddenly realized, so the group of people discussed it. One person went to the Holy Spirit Castle to report the news, and the other stayed in Stone City to find a way to notify the front-line team members in the upper battlefield and ask them to come for support. No matter what, this credit cannot be lost. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1150. Blah blah blah. The clear and traceless spring water splashes down along the canal and gathers in the pool. All you can see is the blue waves, as clear as the bottom. The pool is as big as a lake, as quiet as a huge emerald, and cranes fly across the lake from time to time. The fairy castle is surrounded by green grass, green trees like clouds, and jade buildings built one after another along the lake. One of them is surrounded by spiritual energy and is extremely majestic. This water is a truly drinkable clear spring. Now it is splashed in the pond, but it is not allowed to be drunk by those players. All around were heavenly soldiers wearing armor patrolling back and forth. The strength of these heavenly soldiers was no less than that of the earthly immortals, but no one noticed that at this moment a shadow was passing through the shadows, sneaking in from under their noses. Damn it, you've gone to this shitty place to mine, and you still have such luxury. When Li Bo escaped from the shadows again and looked at the gorgeous palace in front of him, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Lao Bai, Lao Gao. Li Bo tried to contact Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai through the team channel. Team channel, as long as team members are in the same world, they can be contacted even if they are far apart. But since he came to this world, he has not been in contact with the two of them. He guessed that some kind of force blocked his voice. Or maybe the two of them didn't respond to him at all now. But it doesn't matter, I have a small prop made by Master, and as long as I get close to two people, I can take them away by force. Let's talk about the rest. Seeing that there was no response from the two of them, Li Bo placed his palms on the ground. The affinity of the earth made his thoughts blend into the entire Holy Spirit Castle silently, and he could detect every move in the Holy Spirit Castle. Soon Li Bo discovered the whereabouts of the two of them. They were imprisoned on a huge altar under the ground of the Holy Spirit Castle. Why is there an altar down here? Li Bo secretly thought that it was strange because the altar was so big. With a memorial monument as the centerpiece, the area of the altar was tens of thousands of square kilometers. The surrounding space has obviously been transformed and compressed, so that such a large altar is hidden under the castle of gods and cannot be noticed by others. If you want to hide, I will let you be exposed. Although Li Bo didn't know what the purpose of this altar was, it just happened to cause some trouble for these gods. Thinking of this, Li Bo formed a seal with his hands, and strange apricot yellow light balls appeared in his hands. Hey, it's Chinese New Year, so I don't have much to give. I'll give you some ricochet. The apricot yellow light balls were thrown out randomly by Li Bo. Once the ball of light touched the ground, it merged into the ground like a drop of water. Li Bo lost things as he walked. Occasionally, some heavenly soldiers walked past him, but no one noticed Li Bo. His figure seemed to blend into the surrounding environment, and even the heavenly soldiers could not detect his presence. Even occasionally a few heavenly generals just felt that the wind in the castle of gods was a bit strong today. That's all. At this point, we have to say that Li Wu's inheritance does have extraordinary power. The wonderful spells are combined with Li Bo's natural power. As long as Li Bo does not take the initiative to expose himself, almost no one can detect his existence. It can only be said that Li Wu's inheritance is a perfect match for Li Bo's natural power. It's no wonder that Li Zui fell in love with talents and insisted on passing on Li Wu's inheritance to Li Bo. I don't know if it was because of this guy's bad luck. Li Bo went all the way to the basement until he reached the place where the guards were guarding. No one noticed his presence along the way. Looking at the guard in front of him, Li Bo took out a small box from the props book. When he opened it, he saw a group of bugs smaller than rice grains inside. Insanity. When it comes to playing Gu, it is the ancestor of the Wu clan. In the reality of later generations, all those head-dropping and voodoo techniques were passed down from the witch clan. The voodoo in Li Bo's hand was even more extraordinary. It was a kind of voodoo named Tianjiao carefully prepared by Li Wu. Although it is only the size of a grain of rice, its lethality is enough to make the gods change their colors. Hee, let you guys have a taste of the power of this witch clan. As Li Bo spoke, he placed the box in front of him, blew it gently, and the goo insects inside flew up quietly. Although this insect is small, its speed is so fast that even the heavenly soldiers cannot notice it, and it sneaks into the bodies of these heavenly soldiers silently. Hiss. Soon one of the heavenly soldiers began to twist his body. Why is my body a little itchy? Although the heavenly soldiers were just minions, they also had the bodies of earthly immortals, and the armor on their bodies was precious. They were invulnerable to water, fire, and dust, but at this moment they felt their bodies getting more and more itchy. One of the heavenly soldiers finally couldn't stand it anymore and stretched out his hand to scratch the back of his head several times. The more he scratched, the more itchy he got. When he looked at his hand again, he realized that his fingers were covered with white bugs. Ah! Seeing this, the Tianbing's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly wiped the bugs off, but the more he wiped away, the more bugs he wiped away. In the blink of an eye, his body was covered with countless bugs. From screaming to turning into a corpse, the whole process took just a blink of an eye. Bang! With the sound of armor and weapons falling to the ground, Li Bo walked out from the corner. There were only a few dozen bugs in front of him. Now, after eating the flesh and blood of these heavenly soldiers, there were hundreds of thousands of them in the blink of an eye. This is the scary thing about goo insects. As long as there is enough food, their reproduction speed is completely uncontrollable. The skyhorn goo is the most reproducible type. It is powerful, fast, and reproduces astonishingly. Even if Gao Zhou's zombies come, they will be defeated. From now on, when it comes to playing the crowd tactic in the team, he is definitely above Gao Zhou. The only drawback is that the growth cycle of this insect is too fast. An adult insect can only exist for one stick of incense. Beyond this time, the insect will quickly decay. However, this time was enough for Li Bo. He controlled these insects and formed an insect sea army, rushing straight to the underground palace in a mighty manner. Wherever they passed, it was like locusts crossing the border. All the heavenly soldiers and generals were devoured by the swarming worms before they even made a move. After devouring these goo worms, the number of the swarm swelled again, and the densely packed goo worms gathered together like a large black cloud. With such a huge number, it would be a ghost if the gods above could not detect it. Bold! There was an angry roar in the air, and the four gods descended directly to the underground palace, their eyes locked on Li Bo at a glance. Another fish that slipped through the net. When the four gods saw Li Bo, their eyes were not surprised but happy. However, when one of the gods took out the portrait and compared it with Li Bo, he frowned. Not the person we are looking for, one from the Seven Gates, little guy. After hearing this, the expressions of the other three gods suddenly fell down, and they were all happy for nothing. Li Bo looked at these four guys coldly and was ready to fight. Facing the four gods, Li Bo still felt great pressure in his heart. This was not just the arrival of the thoughts of four gods, but the real gods themselves. Just by standing there, Li Bo felt the power of nature in his body begin to stir uneasily. There are many people in the team who can fight against 3 generations of gods, but Li Bo is definitely not included. At best, he would have no problem fighting those 4th generation gods. Then what are you waiting for? Let's kill it first. Seeing that it was not the big fish they expected, the four of them inevitably began to become impatient, just as they were about to take action to kill Li Bo. One of the gods suddenly thought of something interesting. Wait, the person who spoke was Jiazi Shen Yuand. Huh? Brother Yuand, do you have any ideas? The three of them looked at Yuand who was speaking. Jiazi god Yuand is the head of Liujia, and the other three are among Liujia, Jiaxu god Suyi, Jiashan god Zhouliu, and Jiao god Junren. Seeing Yuan speak, they naturally wanted to listen to Yuan finish his words first. He, I don't have any idea, but this guy is already here, so we can just watch the excitement. Yuanda said with narrowed eyes. Oh. Brother Yuan means. When the three of them heard the words, they immediately understood what Yuanda meant. For a moment, the four of them looked at each other and smiled. Yuanda took out a command arrow from his hand and pointed it. It's time for you two to move around, come out. Ding bell, jingle bell. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sound of the friction of chains coming from under the huge underground palace. From a distance, I saw two figures coming out of the dark corner. Li Bo's face suddenly turned ugly when he saw this. Lao Gao, Lao Bai, how are you? Talk to me. No matter how much Li Bo shouted, neither of them responded at all. There was no expression on his dull face, as if he had lost his mind and was sleepwalking. Only then did Li Bo notice that both of them had something like a tight band on their foreheads. And when the two people looked at him with empty eyes, Li Bo's heart skipped a beat, as if he had stepped on the wrong foot and fallen to the bottom of the valley. That kind of empty gaze made him feel strange. The two people in front of him were no longer the comrades he was familiar with, but two puppets who were treated like puppets on strings. You deserve to die. Seeing this scene, Li Bo's face instantly turned red and he pointed at the four of them angrily. When my boss comes back, I will throw you all into the alchemy furnace to make alchemy. Hearing this, Yuand and the other four suddenly laughed. We're just afraid that he won't come, otherwise what are we waiting for here? Jiashan Zhenjiluo said bluntly, I'm not afraid to tell you, this place is already a dragnet. As long as that kid dares to come, the end will be like this. After saying that, he did not forget to look at Li Bo with contemptuous eyes. Of course, forget it, you can't enjoy this treatment. On the contrary, I still need a pet. If you kneel down and claim my master now, I will think about it. How about I spare your life? You. When Li Bo heard this, he started to curse on the spot. He was born in the market, and he was a rough fat man. When he cursed, he spoke the essence of Chinese culture. In one breath, he greeted the 18 generations of the ancestors of the four gods. His foul language made the four gods of Yuanda suddenly he was so angry that he was so angry. Kill him for me, I want him to be broken into pieces. Yuand waved the command arrow in his hand, pointed at Li Bo and roared. After hearing Yuanda's order, Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou looked at Li Bo the next second. Gu Zibai's figure flashed and appeared in front of Li Bo. He raised his hand and slapped Li Bo down. Although it was fun to watch Lao Bai fight in the past, now when it was his turn, Li Bo realized how terrifying Lao Bai's strength was. A gentle palm made Li Bo feel like he was about to lose his soul, as if there was nowhere to hide or anything to hide. A human immortal with extreme martial arts skills who could beat 3 generations of gods with his fist was something Li Bo, as fat as his body, could not bear. Li Bo was disheartened, but he did not give up the struggle. His figure suddenly retreated, and countless sharp earth spears rushed out from under his feet. At the same time, Li Bo himself was already preparing to activate the teleportation beacon and prepare to take the two of them away by force. But at this moment, Gu Zibai stepped on the ground, and his martial arts will penetrated directly through the ground. In an instant, Li Bo felt that his natural power was directly shattered and penetrated by a strong force. At the same time, a huge backlash hit, making Li Bo's throat feel sweet, his chest felt like he had been punched hard, and his face suddenly turned pale as gray. At this time, the Gaozhou people rushed up, and wisps of strange liquid appeared on their palms. Li Bo was frightened when he saw it. He knew that this was Gaozhou's corpse poison. Once he was infected with it, his skin would be peeled off even if he was not dead. Immediately, Li Bo's eyes widened, he pushed his hands forward, and a huge force of nature hit Gaozhou. At the same time, countless sky-horned goo worms rushed towards him. At this time, he no longer dared to hold back at all. But the gap was too big, and Gaozhou was seen holding the general's broken blade in his hand. The blood-red broken blade emitted an evil light, and he split the natural force in front of him with one strike. Gu Zibai on the side took a deep breath and let out a low muffled sound towards the insect swarm. The sound actually caused wave-like traces in the surrounding space, and the next moment countless goo insects were shaken into powder. No, we can only find a way to take them away first. Seeing that if he didn't run away, his life would be decided here, Li Bo didn't care. He threw the teleportation beacon casually, stabbed his head and rushed towards the teleportation beacon. But the moment he activated the teleportation beacon, a cold prompt came from the prop book. Ding! Your script doesn't have enough points. Nonsense, I have millions of script credits. Li Bo angrily scolded his mother. He had millions of script points in his prop book, but now he was reminded that he didn't have enough script points. Isn't this lying with open eyes? At this time, Li Bo deeply realized how despicable the methods of the gods were. No wonder Gu Zibai and Gaozhou were defeated by these inferior third-generation gods. It was really shameless. But it was no longer the time for him to curse. Seeing Gu Zibai's fist hitting him, Li Bo suddenly turned pale. His whole body was enveloped by Gu Zibai's martial arts wool. Even if he wanted to transform into a natural high priest, he couldn't. Arrive. It's over. Just when Li Bo was losing all hope, a familiar voice suddenly came into Li Bo's ears. You idiot, if you can't beat them, just keep a distance and fight these two guys head on. Who gave you the courage? This sound that was so familiar that he wanted to hear it in his dreams made Li Bo instantly have the urge to cry. At the same time, the surrounding time suddenly froze and stopped. Following the teleportation beacon he dropped, two figures tore open the void and appeared next to Li Bo. Sorry, I'm not in a good state today, so I'll just update it temporarily. I owe you all an update and I'll make it up later. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1151. Su Tong used the teleportation beacon to cross over. Wherever he passed, time around him completely stopped. Immortal glory surrounded Su Tong, and at this moment he seemed to be the master of this world. When one foot steps on the earth, it causes the time of this world to tremble. Yuanda and others stared at Su Tong with their eyes wide open, their greed, jealousy, madness, and other emotions clearly exposed. The power of rules, this is the power that only the gods covet. It is said that there are 3,000 avenues, but there are countless immortals in the 33rd heaven. The 3,000 avenues are a drop in the ocean, a carrot, and a pit. Those who master this power are all great gods who sit in one place. Little gods like them, let alone touch the power of rules, even if they want to take a peek, they can't. The player in front of them actually mastered the power of the law of time. How could this prevent them from going crazy or jealous? What is a player? Tools, things like pigs and dogs. Is he worthy enough to understand this supreme law? Thanks for your hard work. Su Tong walked up to Li Bo and patted him on the shoulder. Leave the rest to me. Fortunately, Li Bo still threw out the teleportation beacon, allowing Master to capture the direction of the teleportation beacon in time, otherwise Su Tong would not be able to save him in time even if he wanted to. Li Bo nodded, but then he thought of something and hurriedly said, "Be careful with these bastards, they are playing dirty tricks." Li Bo quickly pointed to his prop book. He still had millions of script points in his prop book, but now none of the props could be used. There were also Gao Zhou and Lao Bai in front of him. The two of them had been completely controlled by them. They were all what these bastards did. Obviously the lower limit of these gods is far lower than Su Tong thought. Don't worry, this is nothing to worry about. Su Tong turned around and looked at Lao Bai and Gao Zhou in front of him. His originally friendly expression suddenly turned gloomy. His eyes were like lightning, and he could see through the essence at a glance, and found that the souls of Lao Bai and Gao Zhou were imprisoned, and dozens of weird mind control methods were used to firmly suppress their will. But their thinking is clear, that is to say, they have seen every move just now, but there is nothing they can do. Such despicable means came from the hands of gods, which undoubtedly made Su Tong even more disappointed with these gods. If he wasn't worried that the collapse of the world would lead to too many innocent people being buried with these wastes, Su Tong really wanted to jump to the god of death and let them give up all the gods in the sky. The four of them were glanced at by Su Tong, and they immediately felt the tremendous pressure Su Tong put on them. The player in front of them was different from the gunslinger Buelyuan and others they had seen. This kid actually had the body of an immortal. Theoretically speaking, as long as Su Tong is willing to accept the canonization of heaven, his status must be transcendent, at least the status of a righteous god is absolutely indispensable. Compared to them, Lu Ding Liujia, their status is higher than anyone knows. However, instead of being afraid at this moment, the four of them had a bit of expectation in their eyes. Why expectation? Because he is a player. If Su Tong was willing to accept the canonization of heaven and officially become a god, they would definitely be kneeling on the ground now. But now Su Tong is just a player, and this is where they become unscrupulous. What's more, they have command arrows in their hands that can control Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai. There are ways to kill him. When they thought of this, the faces of the four people already showed ferocious smiles. There is a road to heaven but you don't take it, and there is no door to hell and you break in. Su Tong, we are waiting for you again according to the decree of heaven. Now that you are here, we will not be embarrassed, put on the shackles yourself, and return to heaven with us to wait for disposal. After Yuenda said this, he threw the iron rope towards Su Tong. There were divine restrictions on the iron rope, which could suppress the immortals. After Su Tong put it on, he would be no different from a mortal. Facing the thrown iron rope, Su Tong raised his hand with a cold face and struck it with his sword. The sword light penetrated time and space and instantly cut off the iron rope. You are just 3 generations of gods, you are worthy of me. Today I will use your soul thoughts to make elixirs to compensate my brother. After saying that, Su Tong held Emoran and split time and space with his sword. The next moment, the figure came out of the future. Kill him. Seeing that Su Tong still dared to take action, Yuand immediately waved the command arrow in his hand. Hearing a long roar, Gu Zibai's dragon-shaped blood energy surged out from his heavenly spirit, transforming into a humanoid Tyrannosaurus, suddenly shattering the time that trapped him. Immediately after Gao Zhou, a black zombie rose up from his body. As a corpse immortal, outside the 3 independent realms, time could not trap him. He could only wait for a pair of black flesh wings to grow behind him. With a strong blow, he would break free from time. For a moment, the 2 men, one on the left and one on the right, surrounded and killed Su Tong. I saw Gu Zibai waving his fist, his whole body covered with huge martial arts luck like a body made of gold, filled with a domineering aura. With the body of a human immortal and his martial arts skills, even an immortal may not have a chance of winning. What's more, Gao Zhou, who has become a corpse immortal, joins the battlefield. I saw Gao Zhou's long black hair dancing wildly, and a strange evil light appeared on his flawless body, which looked like a demon god. He held the general's broken blade in his hand. When he waved it, a large piece of cursed light hit Su Tong. The strength of these 2 guys has improved so fast. Su Tong found that after not seeing each other for a while, the two people's strength had made a qualitative leap. Ha ha ha, let's fall in love and kill each other with your good brothers, Jiexu God Suyi laughed. In order to deal with Su Tong, the above specially fed the two of them flat peaches and golden elixirs to enhance their strength. They were not worried that the two would rebel, because the divine marks on both of them were created by the second generation of gods. No matter who they were, once they were branded, they were destined to be unable to break free. They would be tools in the hands of the gods in this life. Ha! Gu Zibai punched Su Tong. There was a roar of dragon and tiger on his fist, which directly penetrated time and space and fought with Su Tong in the gap of time. Facing Gu Zibai, who was exerting all his strength, Su Tong did not dare to be careless. He suddenly understood the law of time, but it was not as terrifying as the old magic stick. He could not control it freely. Once used against Lao Bai, it would be very difficult to it's easy to really hurt him. For a moment, Su Tong could only use dancing art and the blessing of the law of time, which accelerated the time around him, like a phantom ghost, quickly avoiding Gu Zibai's fist. Kill. At this time, a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood suddenly appeared in front of him, and he saw that Gao Zhou had already killed him with terrifying corpse poison and curse. No matter if you do it or not, they will die, burn their lives for me. Yuan waved the command arrow in his hand, asking the two of them to fight Su Tong and die together. On the side, Jiexu God Suyi, Jiashan God Jiyu, and Jiao God Junren all activated their privileged powers and began to interfere with Su Tong's prop book, preventing him from activating the props. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his eyelids and glanced at the four of them. At this moment, he even thought about what kind of elixir the four of them would make. Just when Gu Zibai came to kill like a Tyrannosaurus, the time around Su Tong suddenly accelerated dozens of times. With a finger pinch, the figure avoided Gu Zibai's fist in an instant, stretched out a finger and pointed at Gu 11 white eyebrows. The Xing Ziju was activated, and a milky white light followed Su Tong's fingertips and hit Gu Zibai's forehead. Court death. When the four members of Yuan saw this, they burst into laughter. The restriction of the gods was a magic technique that had been born since the time of the Queen Mother of the West. Once it was banned, no matter whether you were a god in the sky or an immortal on the earth, you could only be a slave. For writing. As for trying to unlock the restrictions, it's all nonsense. But their laughter soon froze on their faces. Clang. Gu Zibai's body trembled, and his mind was like a yellow bell, deafening. This white light rippled in his thoughts. Wherever the ripples passed, the shackles attached to the thoughts of the soul were suddenly shaken away. Wake up! Su Tong's voice penetrated Gu Zibai's soul thoughts, causing his consciousness to quickly revive. He opened his mouth and spat out a ball of black mist, which should be the forbidden power. Then he turned sideways and took out the Kinkan time stick hidden in his sleeve, and swung the long stick towards Gao Zhou, who was rushing up behind him. Suddenly thousands of golden clouds shone on Gao Zhou's body, causing Gao Zhou to be shrouded in a long period of time. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free. Su Tong stabbed Gao Zhou on the forehead with his backhand. The huge force made Gao Zhou roll back. But Xing Ziju has already entered Gao Zhou's mind. Like Gu Zibai, Gao Zhou shook his head, opened his mouth and spat out a cloud of black mist, and his eyes gradually began to clear up little by little. At this time, the eyes of Jiazi Shenyuan and the others almost popped out. Impossible? How is this possible? How can he unlock the divine brand? The four of them screamed inwardly, unable to believe that this was true. What is the imprint of the gods? In fact, there are many names for it. Among them, the most familiar one is the 4 words of heavenly rules and commandments. The restrictions used to control the gods are also divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels. This heavenly rule is the gentlest one, and no one dares to violate it. If it is stronger, or even slightly violated, it will make people miserable. You see, there are many similar methods in Journey to the West, such as tightening curses or divine incantations. Therefore, those horses and children who came down from the sky, no matter how much they look like cowhide, will immediately lie down on the ground and reveal their true colors when their master comes. This is the reason. Not to mention the divine mark on Guzibai and Gaozhou, which is the highest level of control method. Even the second generation of gods cannot break free from the shackles. How could it be broken by Su Tong? After the shock, the expressions of the four people changed drastically at the same time. Gaozhou and Guzibai, who had already woken up, stared at them with red eyes like crazy hungry wolves. Obviously, during the period of imprisonment, the two of them were tortured by these four guys. So much so that the first thing he did when he woke up now was not to say hello to Su Tong. Instead, he turned around like crazy hungry wolves and both rushed towards them. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1152. Punish them. Seeing the two men rushing over like crazy lions, the faces of the four gods of Yuan turned pale, and the four of them frantically activated their authority to punish the two. Suddenly, information about the failure of various tasks came like a flood. These tasks are disorganized, have no clue, and are extremely short in time. They have been judged to have failed almost as soon as they appeared. The tasks are not big tasks, but small tasks that can be seen easily. This is not because they are not capable enough, but because the creation of the script world has extremely strict balancing rules. Rules that even second-generation gods must compromise. All tasks require a lot of information related to the world in order to be woven into a task line. For example, when Mr. Tai wanted to hack Su Tong, he had to make compromises and balances on the task. At this moment, Yuan and the other four people took advantage of the gods' unique privileges to punish the two of them crazily, but they were unable to break out of the framework of this rule. Therefore, the tasks released were all for little people, and the punishments were minimal. But there are too many of them, and the accumulation of crazy screen swiping sounds is almost mind-numbing. The offensive of Gaozhou and Guzibai weakened instantly. Being surrounded by various negative states made the two of them feel like they were stuck in a quagmire. Before he could kill him, the four of them joined forces and were knocked away. Seeing this, Yuan and the others showed a ferocious smile on their faces. Players are just players, they are just tools. Just because you want to rebel, you can't do it. In their eyes, players are like pigs and dogs, used as sacrifices when needed, and tied with chains when not needed. I wanted to give you a chance of survival, but you are so ungrateful. Why don't you insist on asking me if the swords in my hands are good? The four gods of Yuan summoned their Dharma forms, determined to make sure they never come back today. At this time, Su Tong moved. Give me the props book. He crossed Gaozhou and Guzibai's side, stretched out his palm, and saw a bright divine light emerging from his palm, and suddenly grabbed the prop book of the two. Pull hard. Click. There was a sharp sound coming from the prop book of the two of them. Su Tong grabbed it hard with both hands, and the cover of the prop book was torn open in a short time, and Su Tong forcibly tore most of it open. The other half of the cover made a weird scream, like the tentacles of an octopus, tightly hugging the prop book. Zhanzi Aiju. A thought flew out from Su Tong's eyebrows, and he transformed into Su Tong's clone, holding the ink-stained divine sword, inspiring the fifth inheritance of the nine immortals cauldron, the Zhanzi Aiju. Zhanzi Aiju can cut off the power of the gods' rules. The power of rules that binds players comes from this cover. After being empowered by the Zhanzi Aiju, a grey-white light suddenly burst out from Emoran's sword blade, and he slashed down with the sword, directly cutting off the cover of the prop booklet. The sword edge swept past, and the next moment the cover was chopped off from the prop book. The prop book without the cover looks a bit ugly, but it makes Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai's negative feelings disappear and return to normal. This. The four gods of Yuan were completely dumbfounded at this time. They were stunned for a moment and then screamed, "He who defies heaven." With a scream, the four gods looked horrified, turning around and running away like the god of plague. As a result, when they turned around, they discovered that the surroundings of the underground palace were covered with strange black water, sealing off the space of the underground palace, leaving them with no way to escape. The eldest princess on the side cracked the melon seeds with a smile. "I have never taken the elixir made by the gods. Damn it, I'm going to kill your mother." Gao Zhou was already cursing and rushed forward. He looked like a devil coming out of hell, with huge corpse energy surging and exuding a terrifying murderous aura. With a wave of his hand, countless curses fell down and hit the Dharma images of the four gods. Within a moment, their Dharma images were contaminated by a large amount of corpse energy, and they saw that these corpse chi were passing through the Dharma images and heading toward their own deities. The expressions of the four people changed greatly, and they quickly interrupted the power of the Dharma, and then joined forces to strike out with the divine light of the four armors, trying to force Gao Zhou back. As a result, Gao Zhou didn't accept this trick. Despite being penetrated by the divine light, he rushed forward and grabbed the Jiao god Junren among them. After piercing the body of the god, only a scream was heard from Zhong Ren, and most of his body was torn apart by Gao Zhou. Seeing this scene, the man from Yuan turned pale. You dare to do this, you are deceiving God. You are worthy of being compared to the sky." Gu Zibai came sideways, with a black face, his hands evolved, and activated the 8-arm technique. His whole body turned into a red dragon, rushed towards the three of them, and struck with a punch, which shattered all the magic in front of him. The huge martial arts will, like a stormy sea, smashed the three gods of Yuan and flew away. Immediately after Wu Shuang's hook was swung, the sword energy was like a sea, slashing at the body of Jiasu Sheng Suyi. With a poof, Suyi's shoulders were split open, and the cold air froze his thoughts. Then his waist, abdomen, chest, thighs, etc. were split open by Gu Zibai one after another. His torso was frozen and fell to pieces. If Su Tong hadn't shouted at the critical moment, "Save some for elixir," Gu Zibai would have wanted to split Suyi into 108 pieces at this moment. Before Suyi could rejoice that he was still alive, Gu Zibai slapped the guy towards Su Tong. Su Tong called out the dragon beaming talisman, packed it up and threw it into the immortal furnace. He turned to look at Gao Zhou and cursed, "You prodigal thing, you can beat me up for revenge, but don't bite it. It will become bad if you chew it. What kind of elixir are you making?" Gao Zhou blushed after being scolded, so he simply used the general's broken blade to split open the remaining areas that were not infected with corpse poison, and threw them to Su Tong. The two turned around and caught up with Jiash and Chenjilu. Seeing these two wolf-like guys rushing toward him, Jilu was so frightened that he almost cried. If the two of them were dogs tied with chains before in July's eyes, then now the two of them are like lions breaking free from the chains. And I am the clown who does not know how to live or die, so I am afraid that it is not enough for the two of them to fill the gap between their teeth. I have no grudge against you, Yuenda forced me to do so. Jiash and Chenja began to beg for mercy, but whether they had any grudges or not, Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai didn't care about it. As long as they were the gods responsible for imprisoning them, one by one, even the fairies in this underground palace would be beaten first. Say it again. This was a terrible situation for Jija. Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai pushed him to the ground and blasted him. Have you ever seen fists as big as millstones? With dozens of punches at once, Ji Shui's soul was almost shattered. Followed by Gao Zhou's fists, he struck directly at the waist on both sides of Ji. The beating was so short that I would pee blood. Then the two of them threw it into Su Tong's alchemy furnace and went after Yuan. Seeing these two evil stars chasing after him, Yuenda was so frightened that he ran straight to Su Tong. When he saw Su Tong staring at him with squinted eyes, he didn't know what he was thinking, so he opened his mouth and said, "I am the leader of Liujia, Jiazi Shen Yuand." Yuenda's words came out. Su Tong held the Kinkan time stick and smashed it down with a stick. Yuenda still wanted to hide. But when the Kinkan time stick was swept down, all time around him stopped, and even he was sealed in it, unable to move. Boom, sounded, and the entire underground palace was shaking. Everything round or square is flat in front of me. As Su Tong spoke, he raised his energy and threw it directly into the immortal furnace, clapped his hands, "It's done. Damn it, I can't wait to cut them into pieces." Gao Zhou came up cursing, and then protected Su Tong. "I know you are lucky, so you must be fine." "Of course." Su Tong raised the corners of his mouth and patted Gao Zhou's back hard. Gu Zibai's eyes turned red when he saw this, and his voice choked up, "I promised to come back later, but it took me so long to come back." Su Tong also smiled bitterly. In fact, he didn't expect it to take so long, but he was not the culprit. Su Tong glanced at the eldest princess beside him. I found that the eldest princess had already turned her head to the side. As the saying goes, a snake will not leave without a head. The most important thing for a team is the leader. Losing the team leader is a catastrophic blow to the entire team. However, there was nothing that could be done about it. Su Tong could have left in his current situation, so he could have just patted his butt and activated the invincible Hearthstone and left long ago. But if he leaves, it is an escape, not only escaping his own fate, but also escaping his own fate. In the end, he can only become a pawn played by fate. This is definitely not the ending Su Tong wants. Let's go back first, wait until I refine these 4 guys into magic elixirs, and help you improve your strength to another level. Su Tong was particularly happy to meet again after a long absence. But at this time, the eldest princess frowned. "I'm afraid we can't leave now." As the eldest princess dispersed the black water surrounding the underground palace, the huge spiritual aura suddenly enveloped the entire underground palace. Su Tong was stunned. His eyes were like lightning, penetrating the underground palace and looking directly outside the castle of the spirits. Only then did I realize that dark clouds were surging outside the castle of the gods, and gods were coming continuously. Among them were many great gods from the heavenly court, and there were even many players. At this time, Su Tong took a closer look and saw among the dark clouds a god wearing bright red armor, holding a pagoda, with a long beard and thick eyebrows, and a golden crown on his head. "Hey, there are so many here, even the rumored Li Jing is here." Li Jing is definitely one of the most powerful people among the 3 generations of gods. As the righteous god of heaven, he has his own deity in both Buddhism and Taoism. Taoists call him King Tuoda, and Buddhists call him Bishamon King. Speaking of which, this is also the first time Su Tong has seen the heavenly god of this size. Damn it! It's someone from the Blood Shark group who reported the news. Through the natural force under his feet, Li Bo felt that many players outside were approaching, including Changzhe, who was waiting for someone. How could Li Bo not understand now that he had been tricked by Changzhe and others? "Head, I'm sorry, I thought the other party wouldn't recognize me." After all, Li Bo was very inconspicuous in the team, but he still underestimated the power of the Blood Shark group's intelligence. "It's okay. I came just in time. I'll make a few more batches of elixirs and go back to improve your strength." Su Tong smiled and patted Li Bo on the shoulder to comfort him. He immediately raised his head and stared at the sky with cold eyes. "Let's go out and see how powerful this rumored king of Toda is." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1153. At this moment, outside the Holy Spirit Castle, it was surrounded by heavenly soldiers. Players can only hide below and watch from a distance. When they see the clouds and the heavenly generals wearing silver armor and holding magic weapons, even these players feel numb. Are these gods crazy? Why did so many of them suddenly come? Who knows, but depending on the situation, there might be a fight later. It's better for us to stay away, so as not to become cannon fodder later and have no place to cry. The vast majority of players didn't know what was going on, but everyone could feel the depressing feeling that a storm was coming. Not long after, 5 figures were seen walking out of the Castle of Gods. When Su Tong's face was revealed in front of everyone, many players were stunned. How could it be him? Su Tong was in front of the portal of the exhibition that day. With one look, he scared away Zhang Tyrant and beheaded Zhang Zhenghao, which was witnessed by everyone. At that time, many people found out through inquiries that Su Tong and others were actually the big boss behind Lo Jinfang, Kimen. Later, there were endless rumors about the 7 gates. He was strangled by the order of the gods. The 6th Regiment trapped him in a world and sent experts to surround him and kill him. Instead, he was stripped naked. Yan Zioqi can't tell the difference in a battle with him. Various deeds spread among many players, and many different versions of speculations were derived. In particular, the question of why Su Tong was ordered to be killed by the gods has been subject to constant speculation. Many people did not expect that the 7 gates, which had disappeared for so long, would suddenly appear here. Could it be that all these gods are here to surround and kill him? Some people feel incredible. It is obvious to everyone how despicable the gods' methods are. Even players at the level of the 3 gods can only bow their heads when facing the gods. Now, in order to surround and kill the 7 gates, so many gods have been alerted, which is simply incredible. Are they really that strong? This question emerged in everyone's mind involuntarily. But soon this question was answered. The moment Su Tong and others walked out of the Holy Spirit Castle, a bright light penetrated time and space in the sky, like a huge comet heading towards Su Tong and the 5 of them. The figure that was attacking Su Tong had 3 heads and 6 arms, holding a red tasseled spear, and stepping on a pair of Hot Wheels. It was the famous Nezha, the famous god of the 3 seas in the mythical story. As the top representative of the fighting power among the 3 generations of gods, Nezha's appearance not only did not surprise the players, but actually showed a look of horror on his face. Run. One player cursed bad luck, got up and ran away. Nezha, in the impression of ordinary people, is a little hero who fights against heaven and earth. In traditional stories, he is an outstanding general who helped Zhou defeat Zhou. There are even various animation, film, and television dramas that beautify him. But in the eyes of players, this guy is a devil. It is said that in the Middle Battlefield world, Nezha fought against the Western gods and failed to defeat the opponent. After returning, he slaughtered hundreds of players and used their heads to build a pagoda to cheer him up. This guy's cruelty is famous in the mid-level battlefield. When he has nothing to do, he likes to dismantle living people with arms and legs missing, twist off the heads of beautiful women, and hang them around his neck as a necklace. All kinds of horrific acts are simply outrageous. Who would have thought that this god of plague would actually visit the lower battlefield in person? Now all the players can only run away, for fear of being targeted by this naughty kid. I come. This time, without Su Tong taking action, Gu Zibai jumped into the lead, his body suddenly swelled, every line on the golden skin seemed to have been polished countless times, and every inch of muscle showed perfection close to the avenue. Facing the 3-headed and 6-armed Nezha, arms grew out of his ribs, and 4 arms spread out behind his shoulders. They held Wushuang hook and flew up. Boom! Suddenly, 2 figures collided in mid-air, and an explosion ripped through the world. Thunder and lightning were heard, which was extremely terrifying. Look! The players who had fled far away looked back and had no hope, but at this moment they saw Guzibai fighting with Neza like a red fire dragon. This moment shocked everyone and even subverted their understanding. How could a player go against the gods? How could he be the opponent of the gods? Shouldn't it just be crushed and torn apart by the gods? Bang bang bang. It is rumored that Neza was born according to the will of heaven and earth. He is one of the few people who has become an immortal in the flesh. He has the body of a human immortal and is proficient in Taoism. He has perfected various secret arts and magical powers on his own and has boundless magical power. But how bad was Guzibai? He is also a human being. He has been practicing martial arts since he was a child. He practiced martial arts in the winter and in the summer. He has always had a pure heart towards martial arts. Compared with Neza, Guzibai's martial arts attainments must be higher. Add in the inheritance of the Nishan clan, the secret method of the Wu clan, and the flat peaches he ate while being controlled. How could Guzibai be better than Neza? To be worse. The former of the two is like water, with 3 heads and 6 arms, with endless changes in secret magic and magical powers, and all the ways are harmonious. The latter is like fire, his thick hair is flying, his martial arts will is added to his body, his boxing skills are like a tyrannosaurus, and he is immortal. Boom! The galaxy is surging, endless stars are coming from all over the sky, turbulent like sea water, and the divine chains of law and order are intertwined. I saw Neza standing proudly in the divine light, the spear in his hand clanking, merging with Wanfa, turning into a starlight falling down, stabbing Guzibai. This terrifying power is enough to destroy a whole mountain and land, which makes everyone shudder. All the players watching the battle looked horrified. This attack was too fierce and powerful. How could they resist it? Guzibai took a deep breath, his eyes were as calm as water, and he slowly raised his fists. There became a golden ocean, with countless unique moves floating in it. He poured all his life's martial arts power into this punch, becoming one with him and blasting forward. The world was dim for a moment, as if all the light was concentrated between the two people, and gradually spread as this strong light spread. Everyone's vision was filled with blazing, boundless paleness. I don't know how much time passed, but the strong light gradually dissipated. In the vast sea of light, 2 figures gradually appeared. The fire-tipped spear burning with hot real fire penetrated Guzibai's chest and was embedded in his body. Blood spilled on the ground. Guzibai's whole body was swaying, almost losing strength. His arms were raised flat, and one hand was holding a head. It is one of Neza's 3 heads. Neza was holding a spear, with only 2 heads left and half of his chest shattered. The two looked at each other and regarded each other as a formidable enemy. Upbraid. Suddenly Neza's eyes opened angrily, and he shouted a loud roar, which turned into a white wave and rushed towards Guzibai. At the same time, the spear in his hand shook violently, and he pulled it out from Guzibai's chest. The cold light tore through the void and stabbed towards Guzibai's head. Roar. Seeing the danger approaching, Guzibai roared loudly. The sound of martial arts was like a roar of a dragon, shattering the airwaves in front of his eyes, and Wushuanga with his right hand was violently sent forward. With a pop, Neza's other head exploded, and blood flew up 3,000 feet. However, he was also almost pierced by a spear between his eyebrows. He narrowly avoided it, but it pierced a big hole in his shoulder. At this moment, not to mention the players, even the gods were watching the battle sideways. At this point in the bloody battle, both the gods and the players were greatly shocked. All the players were inspired, as if the almighty gods were not invincible. The gods are all silent, and players are the tools they use to interfere with the normal operation of the script world to achieve their own goals. But now this tool threatens to backfire on its owner. This is not the first time that this kind of thing has happened. Over time, there have indeed been many extraordinary people who have become gods as players, or even disobeyed the gods. but the vast majority of them either surrendered and became a member of the gods, or were beaten to the point of being beaten to death. In the end, not even their names were left behind, and all traces of their existence were erased. And such a brutal resistance like this can't help but remind many gods of some bad memories. Boom! Suddenly, a huge shadow fell and covered the entire sky, covering everything below. Chi! Everyone looked up and saw a pagoda slowly falling. The bottom of the pagoda was flashing with wisps of silver light. It looked soft, but if you look closely, the rays of light flowing out of it were actually like stars. This made people feel shock. Linglong Pagoda. At this moment, everyone's expressions changed. They saw the pagoda falling, forming a terrifying nebula beam, like a millstone crushing all the laws of time and space, and even crushing this world together. 5 beams of light fell, bombarding them together with Neza's figure. Guzibai coughed up blood and felt like his whole body was splitting. He had to step back after being blasted by the divine light several times. The same was true for Neza, but his eyes were calm, as if he was not surprised by this. Between the heaven and the earth, there are strong winds and thunders, the howling wind, the rolling divine thunder, crushing down with the power of destruction. It made everyone yell in despair. You, I won't let you go even if I die or become a ghost. All kinds of classic Chinese quintessences, pointing at the gods above their heads and cursing, all kinds of obscene words, and spitting out fragrances. But these curses seemed pale and feeble as the pagoda falling overhead crushed them down. Hey, it's so shameless to play this trick if you can't beat me. At this time, Su Tong's voice echoed through the sky, and then he gently moved his fingers, and an embroidery needle popped out from his fingertips. The embroidery needle rose up in the wind, and then turned into a pillar reaching the sky, blooming with infinite golden light, stopping time around it. Then the pillar pushed upwards, actually sending the Linglong Tower flying straight up. Now I am the king of pagoda, and I can't help but look worried. He stood up suddenly and walked forward, staring directly at the Kinkan time stick with a look of horror emerging from his eyes. It seemed unexpected that an artifact of this size would fall into Su Tong's hands. King Toda's face suddenly brightened and darkened, and he immediately sneered and said, "Bad man, you think you have this magical weapon to keep you safe? We are here in accordance with the decrees of the gods, so you just surrender and capture me, otherwise." "Otherwise what?" Su Tong squinted his eyes and walked forward slowly. These heavenly soldiers and generals in front of him, and even the rumored king of Toda, were only 3 generations of gods. With the power of the law of time and the 9 immortals' cauldron, he was enough to defeat them. Sweep. Otherwise, if the power of God comes, your soul will be driven away and you will never be reincarnated. That's a big statement, but what if I just want to go against the will of heaven? Su Tong called out the great Sun Ruyi furnace, held the ink-dyed sword in his hand, and pointed the sword's edge at King Li Tian. "I dare to ask the gods in the sky, would you like to test the sword in my hand, whether it is good or not?" Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1154. Point your sword at the sky and ask the ghosts and gods, there is no one like me in the world. Su Tong's sword pointed with murderous intent, and the gods were horrified for a moment. They knew that this man was born with a sinister nature, but they didn't expect Su Tong to be so arrogant. The corner of Li Tianwang's mouth twitched a few times, and then he laughed. "It's up to you. Do you know how many gods there are in the sky? Do you know how many calamities we have gone through, and there is more than one person who wants to rebel against heaven, but what about them?" Morning he died with no bones left, his soul was scattered, and even his name and orthodoxy were wiped out. When he said this, King Li Tian couldn't help but sigh on his face. There are so many outstanding people here, so many geniuses, but in the end, hey, why do you want to rebel? The names of some people flashed in King Li Tian's mind, and these people had also turned the world upside down. There was even a close friend of mine among them, but in the end, he still sent him to the immortal beheading platform with his own hands. The gods control all realms, and it is the foundation that cannot be shaken. Even in reality, people talk about atheism, but are they really atheists? The gods and gods have long imprinted their shadow and influence on everyone's bones, books, and culture like a brand. It is easy to shout an anti-heaven slogan, but in the end no one can really shake the gods in the heavens. Why? Just this. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, and saw thoughts flying out of his eyebrows, turning into thousands of figures. These figures immediately rushed towards the players in the distance. His figure was like a flying rainbow, and time stopped wherever he passed. All the players could only watch as Su Tong's figure appeared in front of them, stretching out a finger and pointing it towards his forehead. Solve it! With the tap of Su Tong's fingers, all the players felt as if a clear spring came into their heads. The next moment, they felt that the feeling of being constrained in their minds disappeared without a trace. Vomit. A player was lying on the ground, opening his mouth to vomit out a cloud of black gas, and his mind suddenly became clear. The player touched his head, and then screamed ecstatically, the restraints are gone, I am free, free. The restraints disappeared, causing all players to scream with excitement. They were locked up in this world as minors and allowed to be driven by these gods, but it was this damn mental mark that prevented them from even escaping. Now that the mental mark has disappeared, it means that they can escape by various means. The one who rebels against God. At this moment, Li Tianwang's expression changed drastically, and he stared at Su Tong, are you their inheritor? After saying that, he felt something was wrong again and shook his head repeatedly, it's impossible, they are already dead. In the battle back then, the cauldron was broken and everyone died, and their souls were scattered. It is impossible to be alive. Who are you, who are you? For a moment, the eyes of the gods looking at Su Tong changed, as if they had seen some terrible plague. When Su Tong heard what King Li Tian said, his heart suddenly moved, and he guessed whether the rebels he mentioned were the 9 immortals in the 9 immortals cauldron. Thinking of this, Su Tong squinted his eyes and called out the 9 immortals cauldron and held it in his hands. Seeing the 9 immortals cauldron, Li Tianwang's pupils trembled, as if all his strength had been drained out, and he almost fell to the ground. In a trance, Su Tong seemed to see 9 figures on his body. Those pairs of eyes were staring at him, just like when they were alive, their eyes were firm and unwavering until death. Kill, kill, kill him. King Li Tian's fingers were trembling, his mouth was trembling, and he shouted with all his strength, but for a moment no god took action. Those who rebel against God act against heaven. Every time it appears, it is destined to bring chaos to the heavens, and is regarded by the gods as the source of chaos in the 3 realms. Only then did King Li Tian understand why the gods decreed that this boy must be strangled no matter what. Presumptuous. A god wearing golden armor flew down from the sky with a long sword in his hand. Ignorant child, let's wait and see if a poor man takes your head. The long sword in the opponent's hand was hung with a rainbow, and a stream of pure yang energy formed a bridge in the air. The next moment, the sword's edge carried a vast divine light and slashed towards Su Tong's head. Seeing the opponent's sword light approaching, Su Tong was a little surprised. Instead of activating the power of time, he blocked the sword in front of him and the 2 swords collided. There was also a look of surprise on the other party's face. The 2 looked at each other. In an instant, the swords were sharp as lightning, and countless sword shadows collided. Ding 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 ding. In the blink of an eye, the swords touched each other for 300 strokes, and it seemed like they were fighting back and forth, but anyone with a discerning eye like Gu Zibai could see that the 2 of them were paddling. Each other's sword moves were killing each other faster and faster. There were many strange changes in the sword moves, but the sword intentions seemed to be exactly the same. Are these two using the same sword technique? Not long after, let alone Gu Zibai, even Gao Zhou and Li Bo could see that their swordsmanship collided and their moves were almost the same. No wonder the fight was so indistinguishable. At this moment, the Taoist in front of him suddenly showed a flaw. Su Tong put away his sword and raised his hand to point at the Taoist's eyebrows. The Taoist body trembled, a ray of white light poured into his soul thoughts, and in a moment, he opened his mouth and spit out a ball of black air. The Taoist calmed down and immediately smiled at Su Tong. "Zai Yang, thank you Taoist friend for resolving my bad luck." As he said that, he put away the sword in his hand with a smile and stepped aside with a smile. This has left many people scratching their heads. However, the eldest princess raised her chin and thought about it. "Oh, it's him. Who is it? Does he look familiar? Why haven't I seen him before?" Gao Zhou came over and asked. The eldest princess rolled her eyes at Gao Zhou when she heard this. "Didn't you hear what he said? His Taoist name is Xiang. Zhenjun Xiang is the founder of Quanzhen. He is half the ancestor of Su Tong." As soon as these words came out, Gao Zhou and others suddenly realized, this is their own family. At this time, Li Tianwang in the cloud almost bit off his tongue and pointed at Zhenjun Xiang. "You are so brave." True Lord Xiang looked innocent. "King Li Tian, I can't beat him. I'm a poor man and I'll be defeated." King Li Tian wanted to say something more, but at this moment another figure rushed towards Su Tong. "Bold, arrogant person, let me fight you." King Li Tian took a closer look and saw that it was one of the immortals in heaven, the dragon-beard True Immortal. "Wait a moment, True Immortal, this beast is dangerous, let us help you." A god general with a big axe chased after him. Even many of the gods' mounts let out low roars at this moment, as if they couldn't bear it anymore and wanted to rush out. Su Tong was also shocked when he saw this. The two gods shouted joyfully and wanted to fight Su Tong to the death, but the expressions on their faces, why were they so happy? "Are you sure you guys are here to fight?" The Taoist who rushed down first glared and said righteously, "Stop talking nonsense, I am a poor Taoist who has received God's grace. I can't see a fanatic like you. Today I am doing justice for God." After the Taoist said that, he put away the weapon in his hand and lowered his head. "Let's see the poor Taoist iron head skill. Good guy, you don't even have to hide this." Seeing the Taoist rushing towards him with his head tied, Su Tong's lips twitched. "Is heaven so unpopular? Is heaven unpopular? This is like asking if the girls in a brothel are all young girls. But the heavenly court controls the immortal's ascension, and all those who ascend have to go to the heavenly court to receive the title. This tight band is put on the head. Do you dare to say that the heavenly court is unpopular? Breaking a broken glass will send you to the mortal world and suffer the pain of thousands of arrows piercing the heart. Whoever dares to say this will not be ripped off by cramps, bones bruised and ashes thrown away." Seeing the Taoist rushing towards him, Su Tong could only cooperate with his performance with a helpless expression and use GZIG to hit the Taoist's iron head. Immediately, I saw the Taoist covering his head, squatting on the ground and spitting out a cloud of black mist. Then he covered his head and gritted his teeth in pain. "Oh, can't you be gentler? Who gave you the iron head skills?" Su Tong rolled his eyes at this man, and saw a big fool wearing golden armor standing next to him. He was dancing with the mountain axe in his hand, and he had been fighting wits and courage with the air for a long time. Seeing that the Taoist had finished his work, he quickly took off his golden helmet and rushed towards him. Now everyone was dumbfounded. A group of players in the distance watched these gods pounce on Su Tong as if they were having a seizure, and in the end they just wanted Su Tong to tap their foreheads. Just waiting for Su Tong to finish tapping the silly big man's forehead, he saw Neza limping up to Su Tong with his broken body, staring at Su Tong with empty eyes. Then he put his forehead against it. "Withdraw." At this moment, King Li Tian couldn't sit still. He quickly put away the exquisite pagoda and waved the command flag in his hand to lead his men away quickly. If he doesn't leave, all the people under his control will be gone. I'm afraid that after Neza is unblocked, the first thing he will do is to fight for his life. Immediately waving the command flag in his hand, Wang retreated in embarrassment. Some of the generals looked at Su Tong hesitantly before leaving. Finally, they were glared at by King Li Tianwang, and then he quickly lowered their heads and retreated. Seeing the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals quickly retreating, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but Su Tong held his chin, always feeling like he was missing something. After a moment, he slapped his forehead. That's not right. You are all gone. Who should I use to make elixirs? With your own swords raised, you came over and told me that we are teammates. For a moment, Su Tong felt like he was actually losing, and his eyes turned weird when he looked at Master Ziyang. He couldn't help coughing. Well, one of you should pay my labor fee. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1155. On Gigzu Mountain, Su Tong and Ziyang Zhenjun were sitting on the ground. Su Tong held a hookah pipe in his hand and started smoking slowly. Smoke and clouds were lingering, and Zhenjun Ziyang on the side was talking about the affairs of heaven in a leisurely manner. Heaven, the world that all practitioners yearn for, was once the celestial garden of gods and goddesses. But I don't know when it started, the nature of heaven slowly changed. Control over all things, control over the gods. Gradually, the emergence of Tiantiao made the gods completely slaves of heaven. Although the second generation of gods headed by the Queen Mother of the West has gradually faded out of people's sight, his control over the gods has become increasingly powerful. Many gods are more like slaves than gods, but they live a more comfortable life compared to other slaves. As a great man of the generation said, where there is oppression, there is resistance. So some gods chose to rebel against heaven. But as King Li Tian said, there were many people who rebelled against heaven. In the end, they were suppressed and eliminated, their souls were scattered, and even their names and orthodoxy were erased. It's just that there is a lineage among them. Although it has never succeeded, it has never disappeared. That is the one who defies heaven. Defy the sky and challenge the gods. This vein either does not appear, or if it appears, it will cause great uneasiness to the gods. Especially when the third heaven-defying one appeared and was able to break the restrictions of the gods, he almost overturned the heaven. That time, the gods of the five directions took action personally, using the power of the stars in the nine heavens, taking the blood of living creatures from all over the world, and beating the opponent to pieces. True Lord Ziyang pinched his beard and talked about that period of history. It was also the first time that Su Tong heard the story from the Nine Immortals Cauldron. There are so many stories about Chinese gods, and even the literary creations of later generations are in full bloom. There are many prototypes of the stories, which may be adapted from part of the stories intercepted from a certain god. But there are no stories related to the Nine Immortals Cauldron. Even if this treasure cauldron eventually became the treasure of Qingcheng Mountain, the Qingcheng Mountain headmasters of all generations did not know the true origin of this cauldron. True Lord Ziyang continued, 500 years later, the fourth heaven-defying person appeared, and his magical powers were even more bizarre. Su Tong immediately became energetic when he heard this. Because I still haven't figured out what the fourth inheritance is. This person is not only a master of Taoism, but he also has a mirror of all karma. The wonderful thing about this mirror is that it can reflect his own karma and karma. If a god is mirrored by this mirror, his whole body's karma will burst out, and his strength will be severely damaged. Otherwise, he will be incinerated by the fire of karma on the spot, and he will be the nemesis feared by the gods. Wanyi Mirror. When Su Tong heard this, he thought about it. Could it be that the halo around him was the cause and effect karma reflected in the mirror of all karma? Master Zhang then listed one by one the unique miraculous skills of each heaven-defying person, but every time he mentioned one, his face became a little more sad and even guilty. The ninth one who rebelled against heaven held a cauldron to defeat the heavens. The gods of the 5 directions, the 4 poles and the 6 emperors were all no match for him. It wasn't until the Queen Mother of the West set up a sail and set up an altar in Kunlun, captured his soul, beheaded his gods, and all the gods joined forces to kill him. Kill. When he said this, Zhenjun Xiang looked at Su Tong, and his eyes suddenly became hot. Since ancient times, the 9 supreme techniques, Queen Mother 11 and the others have known about the lineage of the heaven-defying ones for a long time, but they have always refused to take action easily, just because the 9th heaven-defying ones appeared and killed them, completely cutting off the lineage of the heaven-defying ones. Luck, but I didn't expect that you were born with luck and rose up in response to the calamity. This 9 immortal cauldron fell into your hands, which completely eliminated the calamity of the 9 returned to 1. Su Tong frowned secretly when he heard this, because in Zhenjun Xiang's words, it was not difficult to hear that the shadow of fate was still affecting him. After Zhenjun Xiang chatted with Su Tong for a while, he told Su Tong to be careful. The order to pursue him was personally issued by Queen 11's mother. The specific reason is probably that besides being a heaven-defying person, there is another reason. You have a key on your body, which is the key to open Gigzu Mountain. This is probably why Queen Mother 11 couldn't wait to kill you. True Lord Xiang pointed to Gigzu Mountain at their feet. It is rumored that there is a power that can shake the 3 realms hidden under Gigzu Mountain, and it has always been regarded as a forbidden place by the gods. The East, the West, Hell, Heaven, and even the land of the Netherworld have invested a large number of troops in this battlefield to compete with each other, fighting for the ownership of this place all the time. Key. Su Tong frowned, knowing that it was the key Lilith had given him, and he suddenly thought of the door he had seen in his fate. What exactly is in Gigzu Mountain? Although he has clearly seen through fate that there is a huge altar in Gigzu Mountain, he still has no idea what is in it. This. True Lord Xiang pinched his long beard and looked troubled for a moment. After a moment of silence, listen to him say, "There are many rumors, but I am afraid only the 2nd generation gods will know what they are." Su Tong nodded and did not ask any more questions. He just looked at the faint thread of fate on Zhenjun Xiang's body, said offended and then lightly hooked his finger on Zhenjun Xiang's thread of fate. With the help of True Lord Xiang's fateful thread, in an instant, what appeared in front of Su Tong was a scene of the sky falling apart and the earth shattering, as if it was the end of the world. The sky was in chaos, and broken corpses of gods kept falling. In that chaos, Tai's figure suddenly descended into this world, and a huge divine light irradiated the universe with his hand. Xiang Zhenjun was the first to be among them, and turned into ashes in this brilliant divine light. The fate of True Lord Xiang ended here. Su Tong gave up the thought, feeling extremely heavy in his heart. He knew that in front of him was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and soon the gods of death headed by Tai would arrive. When the time comes, the gods would fight in chaos, and he, himself included, would most likely perish in this battle. The most terrifying result is to cause the collapse of all realms. At that time, everything will turn into nothingness. In fact, Zhenjun Xiang had already had a premonition of his own fate, which was why he decisively joined Su Tong's side. Although doing this is already a violation of heaven's rules, it is better than dying and still acting as a lackey of heaven. Now that the god of death has revived, Queen Mother 11 and the others are also in a state of distress. The gods are unkind and sacrifice thousands of living beings, setting up formations in an attempt to wipe out the god of death. However, from Pandao's point of view, the plan of Queen Mother 11 and others may not be feasible. After speaking, Zhenjun Xiang looked at Su Tong, his eyes filled with the last trace of expectation. He stood up and bowed to Su Tong. "I have been practicing so far with great luck in heaven and earth. The doom has come. I don't dare to have any illusions. I just ask my friends to guard Gigzu Mountain and give all living beings a glimmer of hope. As soon as these words came out, Su Tong couldn't help but feel moved. In terms of seniority, he would not only call himself ancestor, but also call him senior. How can I bear this great gift? What's more, Xiang Zhenjun knew that he might die in the war, but he still died generously, just to give all sentient beings a chance of survival. His courage and righteousness are really admirable. Senior, there is no need to be like this. In times of crisis, everyone should unite as one and overcome difficulties together. There is no need for so many gifts. Of course, Su Tong also had the second half of his sentence, you should settle my labor fee first and then talk about it. However, seeing true Lord Xiang staring at him with such sincerity, Su Tong was still embarrassed to say these words. Head, some players want to join our team. At this time, Gao Zhou received news from the team channel. Those players whose restrictions were unlocked by Su Tong immediately wanted to use prop cards to escape. Even if I return to reality, I plan to hide for a while first. As a result, after activating the prop card, they discovered that they could not return to reality, so some players began to think about joining Su Tong's team. At least they don't want to make pigs and dogs for the gods anymore. The strength shown by Su Tong's team far exceeded their expectations. Now these players want to join Su Tong's team because they hope that Su Tong can protect them. What's strange is that some of these players started to spread the word that Su Tongke is the true god who saves the world. Obviously, ignorance do not matter whether you are a player or an ordinary person. After thinking for a moment, Su Tong neither agreed nor refused, but asked Gao Zhou to tell these players that they would soon go straight to the upper battlefield and participate in the battle of the gods. If they are willing, they can follow him. If not, if you are willing, you can provide a boundary-breaking teleportation beacon and force them to leave. Amei and the others have not yet entered the battlefield area. With the Sun battleship as their support, it is not difficult to send these players away. After giving the instructions, Su Tong walked down the mountain with Zhenjun Xiang, and found that Genren Longxiu and the golden armor general who had come to seek refuge before were waiting for him at the foot of the mountain. Only Neza's whereabouts were nowhere to be seen, but most likely he was going to find trouble with his father, King Li Tianwang. The blood feud between the enemy father and son was maintained by the divine mark. Now that Su Tong has unlocked Neza's divine mark, he is afraid that King Li Tian will not be able to sleep peacefully during this period. Not to mention the enemy father and son, the attitude of the two people in front of them, Longxiu Genren and Jin Jiashan General, was the same as Xiang Zhenjun. They know their fate in their hearts, but the difference is that before, they could only choose to be cannon fodder for the second-generation gods such as Queen Mother of the West, but now they are willing to stay by Su Tong's side, even if they are in despair, they will help him. There are many gods like us in the heaven, but they are subject to the rules of heaven. The three of us will return to the middle battlefield later to help you deliver the message. There will definitely be many gods willing to help you. True Lord Xiang had already discussed with Taoist Longxiu and General Jinxia, and planned to help Su Tong spread the news about the return of the heaven-defying one. This will not only further attack the power of heaven, but also allow more gods to side with Su Tong. Of course, it's not without risks, and once the three are caught, the ending that awaits them won't be so pretty. Su Tong quickly advised them not to put themselves in danger, but the three of them were determined to die at any time. After saying goodbye to Su Tong, they left quickly. Seeing the three people leaving, Su Tong felt mixed emotions for a moment. He hesitated for a while and said to himself, the labor fee is still not paid. Su Tong returned to the Holy Spirit Castle, which temporarily became a gathering place for players. When Su Tong came back, many players followed him, not only wanting to join the team, but also shouting to worship Su Tong as the new god. Su Tong ignored these players who had lost their minds. Most of the so-called gods were created by this kind of ignorance. What I need is real helper, not these ignorant believers. The first thing I did when I returned to the Holy Spirit Castle was to separate my thoughts and make elixirs. The thoughts of the four gods of Yuand were trapped in the immortal furnace. They didn't know what was happening outside. When they saw Su Tong, they immediately started to scream. Don't think that you are a rebel and have offended the power of heaven. This will be your fate at the God-killing platform. Before you, there are 9 other heaven-defying people. All of them are in disarray and their bodies are dead. I advise you to let us go quickly. God is kind to you, and maybe you still have a chance to turn back. The 4 of them spoke to each other one by one. However, Su Tong seemed to have not heard their words at all. He used the supreme alchemy technique and put his hands on the immortal furnace to start refining the alchemy. When wisps of gaseous flames rose from the fiery furnace, the 4 of them immediately panicked. Not long after, the voices of 4 people begging for mercy came from the fiery furnace. Wait, 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 we are the gods of Liuding and Liogia. We have been protecting the world for so many years. Even if we have no merit, we still have toiled hard. Please forgive us for our ignorance and let us go. Exalted Immortal, have mercy on me. All this was ordered by King Li Tian and has nothing to do with the little god. Unfortunately, Su Tong still turned a deaf ear to their pleas for mercy. He now urgently needs to improve his strength. Whether it is the 9 immortals' cauldron or one's own understanding of the power of time, a lot of thought is required. Moreover, both Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai had a lot of injuries, especially after the battle between Gu Zibai and Neza. The injuries on their bodies were too severe. I used the Great Sun Ruyi furnace to heal his injuries, and now they are all gone. Heal. Zhenjun Xiang has escaped from the bill, you 4 can't have sex for nothing. Speaking of Su Tong destroying the immortal furnace, in order to speed up the alchemy, Su Tong accelerated the flow of time around him. In the eyes of outsiders, Su Tong was just sitting quietly by the fairy stove, but for Su Tong, time was accelerating rapidly. Originally, it would take at least several weeks to refine 4 gods in one breath, but as time accelerated, the screams and curses of the 4 Yuanda people were quickly disappearing. Only white smoke was seen rising from the furnace, and the distorted faces of Yuand and the 4 others could be seen in the smoke. This is exactly the process by which their spiritual will is slowly stripped out of the immortal furnace. Without the addition of auxiliary drugs, bits of golden light gradually appeared in the furnace. As the saying goes, the gods can change the elixir, so there is no need for hundreds of herbs to destroy it. All that is needed is to refine all the spiritual will in their thoughts, and what is left is the most pure spiritual thoughts. Ding 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 ding. There was a tinkling sound in the alchemy chamber of the immortal furnace, and pale golden thoughts rolled out of it. He picked up one and put it in his hand. He examined it carefully for a moment before Su Tong's face showed joy. You must know that the 4 Yuand people are not clones transformed by a wisp of spiritual thoughts like before, but their true selves. Even if they are just a small little god, they have accumulated a lot of thoughts during the thousands of years they have been called gods. Seeing that there were more and more thoughts about getting out of the immortal furnace, after the 4 people were all refined, there were a total of 6,700 thoughts piled up in front of Su Tong like a big bag of golden and flawless pearls. These thoughts were divided into 3. 4,000 of them were refined by Su Tong himself, and the other 2,000 were given to Lao Bai. He is a human immortal, and these thoughts will not improve his soul, but they can be transformed into pure energy to heal his injuries. As for the last 700 thoughts, he gave it to Gao Zhou. After all, he had the smallest injuries. 700 thoughts were enough for him to recover from his injuries and take his strength to the next level. Don't think this number is small. You must know that when you became an immortal, you only had 100 or so thoughts. It's a pity. It would be great if the master were here. If he could separate some of his thoughts, he could get rid of his identity as a ghost and immortal. Su Tong felt a little regretful in his heart. Immortals are divided into 5 categories: ghost immortals, human immortals, earth immortals, celestial immortals, and gods. Although they are all immortals, in no particular order. But among them, the identity of Gaixian is the most embarrassing. Call him weak. He is really weak because the threshold is too low. But there are also some ghosts and immortals like Du Xiren, whose strength is terrifying and bottomless. Not to mention, Emperor Fengdu, or even the Prince on the Mountain. But if you say he is strong, it seems that there are only a few who are strong. The others, including the 10 palaces of hell, look at Su Tong's current level, and it seems that they are just that. The reason for this embarrassment is that the threshold for ghost immortals is so low that there is almost no room for improvement. If there were people who could reach the level of Earth Immortal during their lifetime, none of them would become ghost immortals, so if they chose to reshape their corpses and rebuild their cultivation, they would never become ghost immortals. The master had no choice but to make the decision at the beginning. If he had these 18,000 thoughts of gods, it would be enough for him to break free from his identity as a ghost and immortal. When the time comes, with the master's talent, he may be able to practice even faster than the eldest princess. Just as Su Tong was thinking about how his master and the others were doing now. Suddenly, Su Tong's mind moved, and he heard a bell ringing. The ringing was long and lingering, but at first it sounded close to his ears, but in fact it was thousands of miles away. Hey! Soul-inducing bell. Hearing the bell, Su Tong was stunned for a second. Unexpectedly, he just thought of his master and the others, and heard the sound of the soul-inducing bell. This soul-attracting bell is regarded as the standard equipment of Yin Cao. When Yin Cao receives the soul, he will ring the bell to attract the soul. Who is it? Su Tong separated a thought, turned into a clone, followed the ringing sound, traveled thousands of miles in an instant, and arrived at the foot of a forest in just a moment. Looking closely, he saw a man and a woman in the woods, standing there waiting for him to come. And this man and woman are familiar to him. They are Xie Qifanba, whom he hasn't seen for a long time. Seeing the two figures, Su Tong was overjoyed and hurriedly flew down. "Seventh Master, Eighth Master, how come you are here?" Su Tong said and looked behind the two people, but unfortunately he did not see the figure he wanted to see. "Don't dare. Now that you have achieved the heavenly immortal path, we should call you an immortal." Fan Ba's face seemed to have only a serious expression from beginning to end, and he handed over to Su Tong as he spoke. Seeing this, Su Tong hurriedly ran away. "If you two hadn't come to rescue me back then, I would have been dead." Su Tong's words were not polite. If it weren't for the cold iron gourd that the two people left for him, he would have been frozen to death in the witch world. In addition, the two of them had a good relationship with him, and Su Tong was not willing to take advantage of this. "Hey, Brother Su is still loyal enough." Xie, who was on the side, covered his mouth and said with a smile, "The two of us called Brother Su here, and we came just on orders to deliver invitations to Brother Su." I saw Xie sending an invitation to Su Tong. Su Tong took it and didn't look at it, but couldn't wait to ask, "May I ask Master Qi, did the Lord reopen the underworld?" The Lord of the underworld used great tricks to hide the underworld in time. Now the underworld is in ruins after tens of thousands of years. Even Su Tong has no chance of finding the real underworld now. Xie shook his head. "The emperor has issued an edict a long time ago. If this catastrophe fails, there will be no possibility of reopening the underworld." "Right." Fan Ba nodded and added, "We came here in advance to join the Southern Emperor and serve as the vanguard of the order." Hearing this, Su Tong was even more surprised. He picked up the invitation and took a look. Sure enough, it had Du Xiren's seal on it. The Ghost Emperor asked Brother Su to go to the middle battlefield. "When the time comes, hold the invitation and come to the western camp to meet you." After hearing Xieqi's words, Su Tong couldn't help but start muttering in his heart. At this time, inviting yourself into the mid-level battlefield and going to the opponent's base camp is very risky no matter how you look at it. If when the time comes, Duziran turns his back and refuses to recognize anyone, he may never return. He didn't think that his current strength could be compared with Duziran. Seemingly sensing Su Tong's concerns, Xiechi had no choice but to explain, "Don't worry, little brother Su, we are not the same family as Heavenly Court. If the Ghost Emperor invites you, he will never do any harm." This is true. After all, Su Tong was born in a seventh family. So after thinking for a moment, he agreed, but not now, until he had at least thoroughly understood all the inheritance of the Nine Immortals Cauldron. After receiving Su Tong's reply, Xieqifanba did not stay any longer. After the two said goodbye to Su Tong, they turned around and disappeared into the vast white mist, holding hands. They looked at the two of them flirting while walking. It's not like he's here on business, more like he's here on a business trip. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1156. In the Castle of the Gods, one could see the Ruyi furnace standing quietly under the underground palace. The fire was like the sun in the sky, but Su Tong was sitting cross-legged in it. He was not in a hurry to enter the middle battlefield, let alone see Duziran. The only thing he has to do now is to comprehend all the remaining 4 abilities of the Nine Immortals Cauldron as soon as possible. There are 4 types of inheritance left in the Nine Immortals Cauldron. If you follow what Zhenjun Xiang said, the remaining 4 abilities are creating thoughts, pinching stars, transforming Tao, and bringing fortune. The art of creating thoughts can make one's thoughts endless. As long as one thought is left as the root, thoughts can be consumed endlessly. The art of pinching stars is not about capturing the power of the stars for one's own use. The gods of the heavens control the divine way of heaven. The power of the stars in the 9 heavens has long been controlled by them. All it takes is that there is an immortal who found a different path and used his infinite thoughts to create thousands of stars for his own use. Transforming the Tao is based on pinching the stars and transforming into the Tao, which can release one's own Taoist magical powers endlessly. These 3 abilities were described in great detail by Zhenjun Xiang, but only the last step of destiny was very vague. Because he didn't know what the last step was. I just heard rumors that this method has the ability to plan fortunes and calamities for thousands of years. It was created before the last person holding the tripod was defeated. The details are unknown. Once these 4 abilities are cultivated, you will be qualified to confront the 2nd generation of gods. Even facing a god of death like the old magic stick, he can deal with it calmly. After Su Tong absorbed the thoughts of the old magic stick, the number of thoughts had reached 6,000. He also absorbed 2,000 thoughts of the 4 gods of Yuan, and the number of thoughts had reached an astonishing 8,000. 8,000 thoughts were divided into 4 by Su Tong. Time was running out and he planned to comprehend the 4 inheritances at the same time. This would be an extremely dangerous approach for others, as multitasking is a taboo in spiritual practice. But Su Tong is not afraid. He has a delicate heart and multitasking is his specialty. The thought was divided into 4, and the 4 inherited techniques came into view at the same time. Create thoughts, pinch stars, transform Tao, and bring luck. The 4 major inheritances all revealed mysteries. As Su Tong understood the 4 inheritances one by one, he began to show different changes. He saw thousands of thoughts surrounding him, and these thoughts shone with dazzling luster and turned into stars. When the star pinching technique is activated, the stars transformed by these thoughts gradually outline strange shapes. This method can be called strange and terrifying, enough to make the gods jealous. This power of stars is one of the few laws in the world and is controlled by the 28 star kings. If other gods want a piece of the pie, that is just a dream. Not to mention Su Tong, who was under the banner of going against the will of heaven. Without the blessing of the power of the stars, the power of the gods' methods will inevitably be greatly reduced. If you want to defy heaven, you must strengthen your own means at any cost, so this method is created. Use your own thoughts to recreate a star map and create your own blessing of star power. However, this process will consume a lot of thoughts. Even if ordinary gods master this method, they cannot sustain such consumption. But Su Tong mastered the art of thought creation, and the thoughts consumed would be restored endlessly. In a moment, a brilliant nebula appeared behind Su Tong. This nebula was extremely huge, with thousands of stars rotating around an unignited star core, as if it were a huge turntable, absorbing chaos all the time and transforming it into starlight. Now this star lacks a special attribute. Su Tong only needs to integrate his own Tao into it to create the star that is exclusive to him. Su Tong originally wanted to inject the power of time into it, but looking at the flowing starlight, Su Tong suddenly had a bold idea. This idea is too bold. If you are not careful, not only will your previous efforts be wasted, but you may also be doomed. So much so that Su Tong was shocked by this idea. But then he thought about it. Even if he injected the power of time into it and received the blessing of starlight, the increase for him would be limited. Moreover, his opponents are not only the gods of the heavens, but also the gods of death like Lao Shengu. Even though he has mastered the power of time now, and even holds a magical weapon like the World of Time stick, still not qualified to compete with the old magic stick. Even using the power of time in front of the old magic stick is tantamount to playing tricks on others. So what he wants is to inject incomparable divine light into this nebula. This idea is not a bold one. If it goes wrong, the incompetent divine light will come back to him, and when the time comes, he will be directly beaten into a mortal by this light. If that were the case, he would be useless. So although the idea is bold, it must be considered carefully. But after Su Tong thought about it, he came up with a solution, transforming into a Taoist. There is a wise saying in reality, if you can't beat it, then just join in. He can neither solve the Wu Qi divine light, but he can solve himself. You can transform your soul into Tao, integrate the intangible divine light into your own Tao, and make yourself a part of it. The amazingness of Su Tong's brain circuit is simply jaw-dropping. Isn't it obvious that he is joking about his hard training? The risks involved, whether it is the gods of the nine heavens or the resurrected gods of death, I am afraid no one can bear it. Rise. After all, if you make one wrong move, you will fall directly from the peak to the abyss. But as the saying goes, the timid will starve to death and the bold will die of starvation. Su Tong has come all the way to now, but he has never stepped back. Immediately, he started to manifest the Holy Spirit, summoning the energyless divine light and sending it into the nebula. As the dim star core in the nebula was slowly ignited, Su Tong's eyes gradually became excited. In reality, the night light shrouded the streets, and the empty streets were covered with a mist. The neon lights in front of the gate of Wuyuan give people a misty feeling. Wherever the light shines, the entire hospital seems to be enveloped in a red halo. Security guard Lao Wu was sitting in the guard room. He looked up at the clock on the wall and saw that he had reached the patrol point. Then he put down his cell phone, stood up and walked out of the guard room slowly. Da-da-da. All the lights were turned off in the corridors of the hospital. Except for the faint lights in a few offices, no one on duty could be seen. As for those patients, most of them were given sleeping aids and are now very peaceful. Lao Wu walked through the corridor with a flashlight. It was easy along the way. He only paid more attention when he walked into the doctor's office. Because not long ago, an intern doctor disappeared inexplicably. No matter how the police searched for him, they could not find anyone alive or dead. Hey, that's a pity, he's quite young. Old Wu couldn't help but feel a little regretful when he thought of the doctor. Clatter. Suddenly there were crisp footsteps in the corridor. Old Wu was startled, and then turned around to look. The dim corridor behind him was eerily quiet. The light from outside penetrated the glass of the corridor, giving the corridor a strange red light. Who is where? Old Wu swallowed, but there was no one in the corridor. Just when he wondered if he heard wrongly. Buzz. Suddenly the door to the ward on the left was opened. Scare. This startled Old Wu, and when he took a closer look, a chill ran down his back. In the ward, he saw figures that should have been sleeping soundly swaying out of the ward. Their eyes were distracted and their bodies were crooked, as if they had not woken up. Why are you awake? Go back quickly. When Old Wu saw them walking out of the room, he hurriedly reached out to stop them. As a result, one of the patients swung his hand and threw Old Wu 5 or 6 meters away. He hit the wall hard and almost made Old Wu faint. He didn't understand how these scrawny-looking patients could push themselves so far. Kaka kaka. Immediately after the doors in the corridor were opened, Old Wu looked at the figure walking in front of him like a zombie, and his face gradually became frightened. I saw these patients walking barefoot, their bodies seeming to be swaying in a special pattern. At the end of the world, all realms collapse, and the eternal kingdom is coming. Come back quickly, come back quickly. Furious whispers rippled through the corridors, and these patients seemed possessed. The red light outside shone on their faces, and their dull cheeks seemed to have another face in a trance. This scene made Lao Wu stunned. Holding the intercom in his hand, duty room, come to the corridor, something happened. Zizi, the world is collapsing, the eternal kingdom is coming, come back quickly, come back quickly. After a moment of silence on the intercom, that weird whisper came from the intercom. Hearing the whispers on the walkie-talkie, Old Wu was stunned and didn't know what was going on. Just wait for these mental patients to walk along the corridor one by one and arrive under the big tree behind the hospital. They all gather together and look forward, as if waiting for something. Old Wu walked tremblingly to the front and followed the gazes of these madmen and looked forward. All he could see in front of him was flat land. Here. Old Wu looked confused. This place used to be a dilapidated old building and had been demolished long ago. Why is this guy staring at this place? Just when Lao Wu was wondering about this, his eyes suddenly widened and he looked in disbelief at the building that appeared out of thin air in front of him. The dilapidated building seemed to have risen from the ground from another time and space. Buzz. The rusty iron door was slowly pushed open. The old magic stick walked out step by step, followed closely behind by Chang Wuju. But at this moment, his face was completely expressionless like these lunatics. The two of them stood by the iron gate, one on the left and the other on the right, as if waiting for something quietly. Da-da-da-da. Footsteps sounded from the dim corridor. The youngest, already with gray hair on his temples, appeared in front of the iron gate. He lowered his head and looked at the land in front of the door. He slowly raised one foot, lightly jumped over the iron gate, and walked out of the building. The moment his toes landed on the ground, a bloody rain began to fall from the sky. A huge blood moon reflected on the earth, as if a huge eye was staring at the earth in front of it. Shua. The old magic stick and Chang Wuju both knelt down and worshipped beside the youngest. The madmen in front of them even shouted one person's name, Yu. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 1157. Boom. The moment the youngest stepped out of the iron gate, a bright red lightning lit up the whole world. The blood-red thunder penetrated the world from reality, splitting one world after another, and penetrated through it. Huge roars, with a manic and violent light, dyed the skies of these worlds blood-red. Countless creatures were trembling at this moment. Mountain gods, land, ghosts, and elves could all clearly feel the despair that this blood-red thunder brought to all living beings. Whenever the world is split open by lightning, a deep red crack is left in the sky. It was like a bright red carpet, a welcoming ceremony specially prepared for the youngest, until it entered the battlefield of gods, awakening all the gods. Even the gods who had been prepared for this moment could not help but feel unprecedented pressure. The sky is cracking, and a bright red halo is like an indelible scar left on the sky above. Tianyu finally woke up. Du Ziren walked out of his handsome tent and looked at the bright red blood stain on the sky. There was no emotion on his face, but anyone could feel that the Ghost Emperor was in a heavy mood. He let out a long sigh, as if he had expected this, but when the day actually came, he still felt like he had more than enough energy but not enough energy. "Emperor, is he really scary?" one of the guards asked curiously. "What is Tianyu, who is feared by all the gods, exactly like? Is it more terrifying than Tai who attacked Kunlun?" Last time they heard that Tai had resurrected from the underworld, the first stop was to go to Kunlun and have a battle with the Queen Mother of the West, although she was seriously injured by the Queen Mother of the West and left. But the entire Kunlun was almost penetrated by Tai. It is said that many gods who attended the banquet that day were slaughtered by Tai. It's not an exaggeration to describe almost half of the dead and injured. In their hearts, Tai is already so terrible, and how terrible must Tianyu, who has caused all the strange phenomena in the world, be? Du Ziren shook his head. He belongs to the third generation of gods and has no impression of Tianyu, but he has heard about Tianyu's horror from the mouth of Fajun. If Tai is the general among the dead gods, then Tianyu is the emperor among the dead gods. The god of death was the original god, and there was even a rumor that they once reopened the world in an attempt to merge reality and realm. It is said that only in this way, the world will remain in an eternal state forever. In this state, the beauty of heaven and earth will never decay again, let alone the so-called age of ending Dharma. It is said that the Bronze Gate on Kunlun Mountain is actually the eternal world they successfully created. It's just that the world is still too small for them. Although the idea of the death god sounds wonderful, it is based on destroying everything. All realms will collapse, including the underworld, and everything will turn into nothingness. Even Fujun, the oldest of the second-generation gods, is no exception. It's so scary. Then it's up to us. The guard's eyes widened. Although he didn't know how strong Tianyu was, he understood one thing. Even more powerful than Tai, that alone is enough. In fact, what the personal guards want to say is, why didn't Fujun come to stop it? When the underworld was in chaos, wasn't it the Fujun who led the imperial army to wipe it out with force? Du Ziren knew what this kid was thinking, and he was silent for a moment before saying, "The Lord may have already taken action, but he was in a place where we can't see him." After saying that, he didn't care whether the guard understood what he meant, and frowned. "Why hasn't that boy Su Tong come yet? Go, take my tiger talisman and bring him back to me." After that, he turned around and walked into the handsome tent. Tianyu's recovery naturally alarmed Su Tong. He didn't know who Tianyu was, but Su Tong, who was in retreat, felt his heartbeat accelerate violently. It seemed as if an invisible hand had grasped his heart hard. He raised his fingers and stroked the thread of his own destiny, wanting to observe the future through his own destiny. As a result, what caught his eye was the figure of the youngest. The weather-beaten face was looking forward blankly. Beside the youngest were Tai, Nishan, Lao Shengun, and Chang Liuju. In addition to the four of them, there were many figures of the dead gods, and when he looked at these dead gods, he actually found a few familiar faces. That's right, these people are actually patients in the 5th hospital, and several of them have even chatted with them. The youngest. He's out. Su Tong's heart was shocked. A bad premonition struck him. He woke up from his fate and quickly rushed out of the great Sun Ruyi furnace and arrived outside the castle of the gods. When he looked up, he saw the shocking blood stains on the sky, and his eyelids twitched wildly. His eyes were as bright as lightning, and with the blessing of his divine vision, he could clearly see at a glance that the bloodstain was a path leading straight to Gigzu Mountain. In other words, the youngest and the others have already set off. Lao Gao! Su Tong shouted, and Gao Zhou soon appeared beside him. How many players are willing to go to the mid-level battlefield with us? Almost half, the rest are waiting and watching. Gao Zhou was very dissatisfied with this number. He had clearly told these guys that they could not escape at all, and there would be no chance of survival if they did not fight hard. In fact, Su Tong is already very satisfied with this number. Most of these players who were left on the lower battlefield were ordinary players, and there were not even a few certified masters among them. It is obviously unrealistic to ask them to go to the gods with him to fight for their lives. Being able to get half of them is enough to show that they have suffered enough from the oppression and humiliation of the gods during this period. Form into a second regiment. You will lead the group and notify Ame that they are here. Everyone is here and they will enter the middle battlefield. At this moment, Su Tong seemed to have returned to the battlefield in the script world and transformed into Yang Hong wearing armor. The red dragon gold crystal armor was once again put on Su Tong's body. The crimson armor began to revive under the nourishment of Su Tong's power, giving birth to a dazzling luster. The eldest princess also walked to Su Tong at this moment and looked at Su Tong, who was wearing armor, with a strange light in her eyes. If you could be born in the Ming dynasty, you would definitely be a great general who will go down in history. Su Tong pouted, forget it, it's not easy for you, old Zhu, to be the general of the Zhu family. When the eldest princess heard this, she glared at Su Tong angrily, that's because you haven't met an emperor like me. Okay, after this battle is over, we will find a script world. You will be the emperor and I will be the general. Su Tong said half-jokingly. Hearing this, the eldest princess looked at the dazzling blood stain in the sky. This time, we can't say it will be the same next time. Hey, I promise, this time it will be for sure. After the two of them finished speaking, they didn't say any more. Everyone knew what they were going to face next. Su Tong's fingers gently picked up the thread of fate on the eldest princess's body. His brows tightened. But I didn't see the ending of the eldest princess. The eldest princess turned sideways as if feeling something. Don't look, there is no trace of me in the three realms, so you can't find the rules of my destiny. After hearing the eldest princess's words, Su Tong remembered that she was a corpse fairy. With a thought in his mind, he asked, is it true that as long as you jump out of the three realms, your destiny will be blurred? Facing Su Tong's question, the eldest princess shook her head. It's not vague, but it's not. It's an anomaly, and heaven and earth cannot tolerate it. This is actually a very simple common sense. Just like a zombie, it jumps out of the three realms and is not among the five elements. It sounds very awkward, but in fact, when translated, it is an unknown ghost in the three realms, abandoned by heaven and earth. If it rains, I will not give you a few blows on your grave. Lei Du, God is in a good mood today. When Su Tong heard the words, he seemed to have thought of something, but he didn't think too clearly at the moment, and he simply didn't think deeply about it. At this time, Ame had already crossed out of the teleportation array on a solar battleship. The emergence of the Sun battleship means that the original method of leaving through the boundary-breaking teleportation array above has been discontinued. Now there is only one way in front of all players, either wait here to die, or follow Su Tong into the middle battlefield. The children of the Wu clan have been placed in other worlds by Ame, and now there is enough space on the battleship to carry hundreds of players. Some players who were still watching saw their companions boarding the battleship without hesitation. After thinking twice, they gritted their teeth and followed them together. Everyone's mood is extremely heavy, because they know that if they go there, they may never come back. Seeing this, some players simply wrote some letters and gave them to those players who did not board the battleship. The belief is to send a letter to your family or people you care about, and if they are lucky enough to win in the end, ask these people to take the envelope back. There is a prop card inside, which is considered as a reward for them. When Su Tong took the eldest princess and others onto the battleship, he looked at the figures of these players standing on the deck. Gazing across everyone's cheeks, there is no need to watch their fate. It is not difficult to imagine the outcome of this battle just from the grey luster of their fate threads. Su Tong was silent for a while, then took out Shencha and gave each player a bowl of strong wine. He picked up the wine cup and faced the eyes of the pair of eyes looking at him. Su Tong only had 4 words, you. After saying that, he drank the strong wine in his hand. Bang, the wine cup in his hand was smashed to pieces. Everyone was startled, and then their spirits were shaken, you. Yes, what else is there to say? Facing the gods and the god of death, players as tools, in this final battle, the only 4 words they can say are a greeting to their mother. The strong alcohol in their throats was like a ball of gasoline splashed on the fire in their hearts. They raised the wine cup in their hands high and threw it to the ground. Su Tong called out Emoran and pointed the long sword in his hand at the blood stain on the cloud above his head. Let's go.